Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna was born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut. At the time of the incident, she was 21 years old and living in Groton, Connecticut. She was the daughter of Michelle from her first marriage and grew up with her brother, Justin, and her younger sister, Grace. Sophia was very caring towards her siblings, whom she loved dearly. As a child, she was happy and intelligent, showing unique qualities. She was active and full of energy, leading a vibrant and fulfilling life. However, her life was significantly affected by her parents' divorce when she was about 6 or 7 years old, which left her with a deep emotional scar. During high school, Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which contributed to her depression. This mental illness is marked by extreme mood swings, including episodes of mania or hypomania. Sophia faced emotional lows, characterized by sadness and melancholy, alternating with high-energy periods of euphoria. These mood swings affected her behavior and ability to think clearly. She received treatment, including medication and therapy, to help manage her symptoms, but there is no cure for bipolar disorder. This condition poses challenges for both Sophia and her family. It had a significant impact on her daily life, making her behavior unpredictable and her life chaotic, leading to unstable relationships. Those around her often exhibited complex behaviors as well. In 2015, Sophia met Austin, a bright and cheerful young man who quickly won her heart. He pursued Sophia with charm and determination, and they entered into a 3-year relationship. Unfortunately, this relationship was difficult for both Sophia and her mother, Michelle. Austin had some troubling behaviors. He was somewhat aggressive and used anabolic steroids for sports, which contributed to the instability of their relationship. The couple frequently argued and shouted at one another, sometimes escalating to physical confrontations. Sophia, who struggled with mental health issues, often initiated these conflicts. On multiple occasions, Austin's aggressive behavior resulted in injuries to Sophia, necessitating hospital visits. About a month before the incident, Sophia found out about Austin's cheating and decided to end their relationship. Despite this, they still met occasionally. While dealing with her emotions, Sophia focused on moving forward. She was a striking young woman and briefly worked as a model for a local jeans company, which helped her pay for her education. Eventually, she graduated as a massage therapist and got a job at an upscale spa called the Red Door, located in a luxury hotel. There, she met Spencer Mugford, a 20-year-old colleague. Spencer, originally from Florida, loved the sea and was an experienced swimmer working as a sailing instructor. He came from a caring family that had big hopes for his future. Spencer and Sophia quickly formed a close bond due to their shared interests and similar personalities. They reportedly dated for a while, but their families disapproved because the couple often found themselves in troublesome situations. Sophia's mother, Michelle, expressed deep concern for her daughter's well-being, particularly since Sophia continued to meet with her ex-boyfriend, Austin, and they frequently drank alcohol together, which had become a nearly daily habit. Ultimately, Sophia and Spencer decided to end their romantic relationship and remain friends. The exact reasons for this decision are unclear, but it seems that Sophia may have rekindled her relationship with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued to spend a lot of time together, both at work and outside of it, including on their last day together. On Saturday the 27th, Austin tried to reach her but didn't get any response. Initially, he wasn't too concerned because he knew Sophia often slept in. However, after several hours of trying to call and message her without success, he started to worry. He then reached out to Sophia's mother, Michelle, to check if Sophia had contacted her the night before. Michelle hadn't looked at her phone because her younger daughter had been using it all morning. When Michelle checked her phone, she saw that she had 7 missed calls from an unknown number. She decided to call back but only reached the voicemail of Spencer, boyfriend of her daughters. This made her suspect that the calls might have been from Sophia. Michelle then tried to reach Sophia but got no answer. Feeling anxious, she and Austin started to search for Sophia. Austin called all the local hospitals, while Michelle reported Sophia as missing to the police. They contacted Spencer's family and found out that his relatives were also concerned because he hadn't arrived at an important family gathering and had not answered their calls. They went to Spencer's apartment but found no indication that he had been there. Spencer's father was worried because he knew his son had met with Sophia the night before, especially considering the problems she was dealing with. Spencer's mother mentioned that her son had said he planned to go fishing with a friend, but she suspected he was not truthful and actually intended to meet Sophia. She last spoke to him at 10 p.m. when he said goodnight. Concerned about his absence, Spencer's family reported both his and his girlfriend's disappearance to the police around 6:30 p.m. next day. The police started searching for them at that time. Austin reached out to the sheriff to share information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the night before. He explained that he knew this because he had let Sophia go there. Austin also mentioned that he found a video Sophia posted on Snapchat the night before. In the video, which was recorded on Spencer's phone, they were on a boat heading towards the lighthouse. The footage showed a young man rowing towards the lighthouse, and it looked like they were having a good time. Later, Sophia uploaded a video to her Snapchat account. In the video, she was playfully posing with a concrete barrier and a lighthouse in the background, which had a "Do Not Cross" sign. What happened just minutes after this video remains a mystery. 5 minutes after posting the video at 2:05 a.m., Spencer's mobile phone made its first call to Michelle, Sophia's mother. This was followed by 3 more calls at 2:06, 2:08, and the last call at 2:09. Michelle, who was asleep at the time, did not answer any of these calls. No voicemails or text messages were left, and 911 did not receive any calls from that number that night. The photos and videos shared by them verified their presence at the lighthouse. Consequently, the police quickly sent 20 Coast Guard units to the location. Searches were carried out by the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police using air, sea, and land methods. The police made their first significant find: Sophia's car parked on a university campus, along with her cell phone inside it. Simultaneously, on that same night, the Coast Guard found a T-shirt that Spencer had worn in the video. The police theorized that Spencer may have used it to tie the boat to the shore. The search went on through the night and into the next day. Soon after, a storm hit and state authorities decided to suspend the search for them until new clues or signs of their possible location emerged. This decision left their families and friends devastated, but they didn't give up. They continued searching on their own, putting up pictures and sharing information about Spencer and Sophia's disappearance all over the city. They urged the public to report any information they might have. However, despite many people being in the area when the young people went missing, no witnesses came forward. The families' searches continued for several days, but all questions remained unanswered. What happened? Why did Sophia repeatedly call her mother? Why didn't she leave a voicemail or call the police? There were many speculations and assumptions. Could they have consumed something illicit? Indeed, Sophia and Spencer had broken the law by stealing a boat from the campus and heading to the lighthouse without permission. It's likely Sophia feared they could be held accountable and thus chose not to contact the police. A few days prior, she and Spencer had already had legal issues. Spencer had been detained for driving under the influence, and Sophia had faced charges for aggressive behavior. Perhaps for this reason, she preferred to contact her mother rather than the police. However, it's unknown what other circumstances were present in Sophia's life at that moment. She might have been in a state of panic and unable to think clearly. Everyone's reaction to such situations can be unpredictable. On May 26, 2018, detectives worked to piece together the day's events. It started as a typical sunny and warm day, with the weekend ahead promising fun as the city prepared for Memorial Day celebrations. Sophia had the day off, while Spencer was scheduled to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Once he finished his shift, the couple planned to meet and join in the festivities. They looked forward to spending the rest of the day together, including a visit to the famous lighthouse known for its paranormal happenings, which they were excited to explore. What happened after Spencer's shift is unclear. We don't know where he went, if he met anyone, or whether he had been drinking. However, we do know that Sophia parked her car at the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. She left her cell phone in the car, possibly because she forgot it or it was out of charge. They then took an illegal sailboat that had no motor, weighed 14 pounds, and was only equipped with oars. They pushed the boat into the water and headed towards the lighthouse, navigating along the rocky shores. This was a dangerous situation because the boat didn't have any safety equipment. They probably felt confident taking this risk due to Spencer's swimming and boating skills, which he had had since childhood. The investigators were only able to collect limited information about the events of that night. On Monday evening, while searching from a helicopter, the police spotted a white and blue sailboat stuck on the rocks, covered in dust. This boat was found 12 kilometers west of the lighthouse. Police reports suggest this could be the same boat that went missing from the campus and might have been used by Spencer and Sophia, but this remains unconfirmed. Fingerprints were discovered on the boat, but they were never analyzed, and the results were not made public to confirm whether they matched those of the young couple. Additionally, there was confusion about the type of boat involved. It was first described as a kayak, but later reports indicated it was a white sailboat with red markings. On June 8, 2018, fishermen on a commercial vessel near the Long Island Straits spotted something unusual in the water. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a man's body. They promptly reported their find to the Coast Guard. When police arrived, they retrieved the body of a young man from the shore. They observed unexplained bruises and abrasions on the body, which was later identified as Spencer Mugford. He had been reported missing a few days earlier, along with his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna. To investigate the cause of Spencer's death, his body was sent for examination. The autopsy results confirmed that drowning was the cause of death, with no evidence of violence and all injuries linked to water. However, the specific details of the autopsy were not made public. During the same weekend that Spencer and his girlfriend went missing, 2 other men also disappeared in the area, and their bodies were later discovered, also having drowned. Initially, the police viewed these incidents as tragic accidents caused by unfortunate circumstances, and they did not explore any other theories at that time. Unfortunately, Spencer's girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, was never found. After several days of searching, fishermen discovered Spencer's body, leading his family to publish an obituary in the local media. In contrast, Sophia's family also wrote an obituary but remained hopeful for her return and continued to actively search for her. They frequently tried to recall the events leading up to her disappearance, trying to reconstruct what the young people did that evening and whether they interacted with anyone that night. Unfortunately, no new information surfaced. It remained unclear whether there were any calls made from Spencer's phone besides those to Michelle, as his mobile device was never found, and the police did not provide cell phone records. Moreover, the cameras at both the lighthouse and the campus were reportedly malfunctioning, resulting in no video footage from that night. It was also revealed that authorities had not checked the lighthouse, which should have been done immediately after the couple went missing. In July 2018, Sophia McKenna's family created a Facebook page named Searching for Sophia McKenna to keep awareness of her case alive. The page was used to share updates, brochures, and requests for information from the public. A few weeks after Sophia went missing, a concerning incident occurred. Michelle received a message from Sophia's social media account asking for money. Since Sophia's phone was with the police, this message raised suspicions of possible hacking. The investigations into Spencer's death and Sophia's disappearance reached a standstill, with police providing no definitive answers. Meanwhile, various unofficial theories about the case circulated. One theory suggested that Austin, Sophia's ex-boyfriend, may have been involved in their disappearance, with some speculating that he could have harmed Sophia and received help from his friends in disposing of Spencer's body. Sophia and Austin had a rocky relationship characterized by frequent fights and physical confrontations, which became a topic of public gossip. Michelle, Sophia's mother, saw many of their arguments firsthand. A month before Sophia went missing, serious problems emerged after she discovered Austin was cheating on May 8, 2018, which led her to break up with him. In what could have been a revenge move or a fresh start, Sophia started dating another guy and brought him to her apartment. This angered Austin, who stormed over and began banging and kicking the door while shouting insults at Sophia. After around 15 minutes of quiet, Sophia thought Austin had left and opened the door, but he was still there and tried to push his way inside. Luckily, Sophia quickly managed to shut the door again. Neighbors reported hearing him threaten to harm Sophia if she didn't open it. By the time the police and Michelle arrived, Austin had been arrested. The following day, May 9th, a court order came into effect. In her statement, Sophia detailed earlier attacks by Austin and included photos of her injuries. She expressed that she was afraid for her life because he was stalking her. A restraining order was issued, preventing Austin from being in the same area as Sophia. However, Sophia later felt guilty about the situation, and the restrictions were changed. Now, Austin was only barred from being in the same apartment as her. The man who was with Sophia at the time did not reveal his identity and initially did not cooperate with the police. Michelle initially claimed that it was Spencer with Sophia, but later changed her statement. However, a colleague whom Sophia trusted confirmed that it was indeed Spencer. Colleagues of Sophia and Spencer stated that they were in a relationship at the time of their disappearance and acted like a couple both at work and outside of it. Witnesses reported an incident at the hotel where Sophia's ex, Austin, confronted her at her workplace and threatened her publicly. Despite this, Austin and his father joined the search for the missing couple, using a private helicopter and distributing flyers with their images throughout the city. Austin claimed on social media that Sophia had been his girlfriend for 3 years and insisted she had only a platonic friendship with Spencer. Many found this post strange, as it seemed to focus more on his relationship with Sophia than on her disappearance. On July 10th, Sophia's family and friends held a memorial for her. Austin attended the event with Michelle and later shared a now-deleted message online saying, "Rest in peace, baby, we'll see each other soon." These actions raised concerns among people who knew them. Austin told the police that he spent the entire day with Sophia on May 26th and that they continued to meet despite a court order, even making plans for the following day. A friend of Austin mentioned that around 3 a.m. on the night of the incident, Austin texted Sophia saying he was at the gym with a friend. However, this claim seems questionable since gyms are closed at that hour. His family asserted he was home before leaving for the gym. An anonymous witness stated that Austin and his brother were invited to a party that day. Although Austin initially planned to attend, he later texted that he was tired and would not go. This situation raises concerns about Austin's location when Sophia and Spencer went missing, and there are no clear answers regarding his whereabouts. Austin's friends describe him as moody, which may be intensified by steroid use. There were rumors about Austin, his brother, and a friend having ties to the local police. Furthermore, a woman related to Austin was reportedly married to the police chief who was looking into Sophia's case and had faced complaints of police violence. However, the trustworthiness of these claims, made by a friend of Austin with a criminal history, is questionable. The day after these rumors circulated, a YouTube channel focused on disappearances in Long Island uploaded a video about Sophia. After that, Austin deleted all of their photos together from his social media, leading to confusion, especially since Sophia's fate was still unknown. One theory suggests that Austin had started dating someone new and wanted to avoid complications. However, it seemed odd that he removed all photos of Sophia. Additionally, shortly after Sophia went missing, Austin became noticeably less involved in the search efforts. When he met with investigators, he seemed calm and collected, showing no visible signs of distress over the loss of someone important. However, this alone is not enough to make any accusations against Austin, as people have different ways of responding to stress. One theory proposes that Sophia was murdered to stop her from testifying against Austin in a domestic violence case. If she hadn't spoken, there would not have been enough evidence to proceed, possibly leading to the case being dismissed. This scenario occurred in the summer of 2018 when the charges against Austin were dropped. It's crucial to mention that Austin is not formally considered a suspect. This theory is speculative, and the investigation is ongoing. Another theory suggests that Sophia and Spencer might have encountered dangerous people at the lighthouse. It was a busy holiday, but witnesses either failed to remember them or deemed the information unimportant, resulting in no reports made to the police. Sophia's mother suspected that her daughter could have been kidnapped or trafficked, but there is no evidence or ransom requests to back this up. The police also looked into the possibility of an accident caused by poor judgment. The young couple took an unprepared boat without life jackets into strong currents. After reaching the lighthouse, they secured the boat with Spencer's T-shirt and took some photos, only to discover that the boat had drifted away. Spencer, relying on his swimming skills, may have underestimated the cold temperature of the water. The darkness could have distorted his perception of distance, making the boat seem closer than it actually was. Exhausted from his workday and the swim to the lighthouse, Spencer might have drowned. Sophia realized she couldn't see or hear Spencer, so she attempted to call her mother for help. In her desperation, she might have jumped in to save Spencer and ended up drowning herself. Although Sophia was not a strong swimmer, alcohol could have influenced her to make a poor decision. Alternatively, she may have been walking along the narrow ledge of the lighthouse, trying to find Spencer, when she stumbled and fell while holding her phone. If that happened, she could have been swept away by the current and drowned. These possibilities are still considered, but other theories exist as well. None are formally recognized, and there are no suspects or culprits identified. Most of this information circulates on social media. Sophia's family and friends are still searching for her, determined to find out what happened and where she might be. In 2019, an independent detective discovered several bones near the shore and quickly reported them to the police. However, when investigators arrived, they concluded that the bones were from animals. The remains were never collected, and due to high costs, no forensic tests were performed to check if they were human. There are many troubling aspects of this case that deserve a deeper investigation. After all, it involves a missing person whose family is in distress, desperately seeking answers. Sophia deserves ongoing search efforts. While other bodies of missing individuals have been found in these waters, Sophia's has not. There have been no new developments in her case, and the mystery of what occurred that night at the lighthouse remains unresolved. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Turpin family. David Turpin was born on October 17, 1961, in Princeton, West Virginia, to Betty and James Turpin. David came from a devoutly religious family and had a relatively normal upbringing. During his high school years at Princeton High School, David participated in various activities, including Bible Club, Chess Club, Science Club, and a cappella choir. David enrolled at Virginia Tech University after graduating from high school to pursue a degree in electrical engineering in Blacksburg, Virginia. Thanks to his exceptional skills in computer engineering, David landed jobs at leading defense technology companies such as Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin. Louise Turpin was born on May 24, 1968, in Princeton, West Virginia. She is the eldest of 6 children of Wayne Robinette, a preacher, and Phyllis Robinette, who worked at Walmart and sang in the church choir. The Robinette children's home environment was tense due to frequent conflicts between their parents, which led to harsh treatment. Louise and her sisters were sexually abused by a family member as children. This traumatic experience was a secret kept within the family. According to Louise's younger sister, Elizabeth, Louise played a protective, gentle, kind, and nurturing role. She comforted her siblings during their parents' violent conflicts and protected them from abusive relatives. At the age of 15, Louise met 22-year-old David Turpin at church. They kept their relationship a secret for fear of Louise's parents' reaction. However, when the truth was discovered, Louise's mother Phyllis eventually accepted their relationship, partly because David came from a devout Christian family and Louise convinced her. David and Louise decided to keep their relationship a secret from her father, Wayne, knowing that he would be furious if he found out. In January 1985, 23-year-old David visited Louise's school, Princeton High School, where he had graduated 5 years earlier. He convinced the staff to let him take Louise out of class, and she left willingly with him. They began their journey south, planning to elope. When Louise's parents discovered she was missing, they called the police. Before the police could catch up with them, the couple headed to Texas, where they planned to secretly marry. However, when they were stopped, they agreed to return to West Virginia. When they returned home, Wayne and Phyllis's reactions were surprisingly calm. Initially, Wayne was angry with Phyllis for allowing their daughter, Louise, to date David. However, when he saw how much they loved each other, he realized that it would be difficult to separate them. So Wayne agreed to let them marry on February 11, 1985, in a small ceremony in Pearisburg, Virginia. 2 years later, Louise's parents divorced and Louise's father, Wayne, took a job as the chief deputy assessor of Mercer County. After marrying David, Louise began to live more independently and freely. Louise was happy with her new life. In 1988, Louise gave birth to her first daughter, and 18 months later, their second child was born. David was then transferred to General Dynamics, and his family moved to Fort Worth, Texas. They settled in a modern neighborhood called Meadow Creek. Louise's family lived a lavish lifestyle thanks to David's high-paying job. Louise, eager to show off her family's newfound wealth, invited relatives from West Virginia to visit. Having grown up on a tight budget, Louise was happy to show off her current success. To make their visit comfortable, David and Louise paid all the expenses. The Louises welcomed a baby boy in 1991, bringing them even more joy. However, by 1992, the Louises were in debt. Despite their financial struggles, they continued to live a lavish lifestyle. In 1993, Louise became pregnant with her 4th child, a girl. In 1994, Louise's oldest daughter started 1st grade at Meadow Creek Elementary School. She looked neglected, with greasy, unkempt hair, dirty clothes, and poor hygiene. Her appearance made her the target of teasing by her classmates. In 1995, Louise's family welcomed a fifth child, a boy. Louise's family seemed carefree despite their financial difficulties and continued to splurge on luxuries, treating relatives to expensive meals. When Louise's younger sister Elizabeth joined them on their 1996 vacation in Fort Worth, they stopped at a casino in Louisiana on the way. While at the casino, Louise asked Elizabeth to babysit the children so she and David could gamble. They asked Elizabeth not to tell anyone about this, knowing that it was against their Christian values. During this visit, David and Louise's gambling led to losses. Tensions became apparent when David claimed that Louise had a serious gambling addiction and blamed Louise for their financial difficulties. While staying with Louise's family, Elizabeth was shocked by the family's disturbing behavior. David and Louise did not show much affection for their children and tightly controlled every aspect of their lives. Elizabeth was particularly concerned about David's behavior, as he often invaded Elizabeth's privacy by entering the bathroom while she was showering, making her feel uncomfortable and insecure. In May 1997, the Tuppins had their fifth child. By September of that year, concerns about their eldest daughter and the possible signs of sexual abuse began to grow. In 1998, the family had a sixth child. Although David had a well-paying job, the family's financial situation worsened due to their frequent gambling, which caused significant financial strain. In the spring of 1999, the eldest daughter dropped out of school, as did the other children. Louise and David announced that they were homeschooling their children. In late 1998, the bank foreclosed on the family's home in Fort Worth, so Louise and David moved to Rio Vista, Texas, a less populated area. The new home that Louise and David had in Rio Vista was in serious disrepair when they moved in. It was dirty, stained, and smelled bad. Before moving into the Rio Vista home, the Louises had their seventh child. Over the next 6 years, the family added 5 more children. Over time, the parents, David and Louise Turpin, became increasingly irresponsible and abusive. They physically harmed their children, beating, choking, and whipping them with belts, often for trivial reasons such as not letting them go to the bathroom. The children were also severely neglected in terms of personal hygiene, with some only bathing once a year. Despite purchasing nutritious food, David and Louise often withheld food from their children, forcing them to starve. The parents would tease their children by leaving uneaten meals in plain sight. Instead, the children were fed cheap frozen meals, resulting in severe malnutrition. This neglect was evident in the children's slow development, pale skin, and youthful appearances that did not match their actual ages. In 2004, Louise's family moved to a nicer trailer, leaving behind their old home in Rio Vista, which had become uninhabitable due to years of neglect, garbage accumulation, and rodent infestation. In 2008, Louise Turpin, then 40, had a shocking conversation with her sister Teresa. Louise revealed that she and her husband David had abandoned their Christian education and stopped attending church. Instead, they had become interested in Satanism and used Ouija boards. Louise also confessed that she and David had engaged in wife swapping, a lifestyle that involved having sex with other couples they met online. What was even more disturbing was that they often left their younger children at home, in the care of their older siblings, while they went out to meet strangers they had met online. This drastic change in Louise, who had always been caring and responsible, worried her older sister Teresa. Despite their financial struggles, Louise's family often went to Disneyland in matching outfits, taking lots of happy photos. Louise made sure to send these photos to her family and her parents. The only indication to Louise's family that the children were okay was through these photos, which showed them appearing happy despite being very thin. In 2014, Louise's family moved to Paris, California, about 20 miles north of Murrieta. By this time, the child abuse had reached an extremely violent level. David and Louise had tied their children to their beds with ropes. If the children tried to escape, the ropes were replaced with chains and locks. The children were locked in the room for around 20 hours a day, forced to endure the stench that permeated the air. In 2015, the family welcomed their 13th and final child. Soon after, the family traveled to Las Vegas to celebrate David and Louise's 30th wedding anniversary. Faced with the horrors of their living conditions, Louise and David's 17-year-old daughter made the brave decision to seek help by reporting the abuse to the police. She climbed out of the window and quickly called the police on the phone. During a tense 20-minute 911 call, she detailed the deplorable living conditions and the countless abuses she and her siblings endured. With photographs of their desperate situation as evidence, she waited for the police to arrive. When police arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene: a severely malnourished girl who appeared to be about 10 years old. The girl led police to the front door, where they found Louise. Upon entering the home, police immediately smelled a strong stench that made it difficult to breathe. Despite the strong odor, police continued to investigate and made a horrifying discovery: 3 younger children chained to beds. The home was in a state of extreme disarray, with trash and dirt covering the floor because there was no toilet access. Police quickly took the younger children to Riverside University Medical Center for evaluation and care, while the older children were taken to Corona Regional Medical Center. David and Louise Turpin were arrested on January 14, 2018, for child abuse and torture. Within 4 days, they faced multiple charges. Each of them was charged with 12 counts of torture, 7 counts of abuse, 6 counts of child abuse and neglect, and 12 counts of false imprisonment. David Turpin also faces a separate charge of lewd conduct with a child under 14. Among their children, a 2-year-old child showed no obvious signs of abuse. In addition to being abused, the children were treated extremely cruelly by their parents. They suffered severe physical abuse that resulted in neurological damage. The children of Louise and David lacked basic life skills and knowledge. Although their parents, David and Louise Turpin, bought them toys, the children were not allowed to play with them. They were forced to stay up until the early hours of the morning, often until 4 or 5 a.m., and were not allowed to go to bed before that time. In 2018, the court took action against the Turpin parents. On January 24, the judge ordered that David and Louise have no contact with their children for 3 years, and that all contact be through their attorney. On June 21 of the same year, the court decided that there was enough evidence against David and Louise to proceed to trial. The trial concluded on February 22, 2019. On that day, David and Louise Turpin pleaded guilty to 14 counts including torture, abuse, false imprisonment, and child endangerment. During the trial, David and Louise had an emotional reunion with their children. The children appeared to have forgiven their parents and were affectionate toward David and Louise. Each expressed a wish for their parents to be well and shared that their lives were going well. David and Louise sincerely apologized for their past actions and expressed their deep love for their children, wishing them success in life. David and Louise were subsequently sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As of 2022, Louise, 53, and David, 60, are both eligible for parole in 2037. The severe abuse and neglect in their home shocked the community and beyond. The community came together to support the children, giving them hope and a new start in life. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Mackenzie Lueck. Mackenzie Lewick was born on March 8, 1996, to Diana and Gregory Leck. Her father worked in healthcare logistics and administration, and her mother was a homemaker. Mackenzie grew up in El Segundo, a city in Los Angeles County, California, with an older brother and two younger brothers. Mackenzie attended El Segundo High School, where she was a member of the swim team and played water polo. Mackenzie was a hardworking student with a strong interest in art, music, and animals. Mackenzie attended the University of Utah, where she majored in kinesiology and nursing and was a member of the Alpha Kappa Omega sorority. While in college, Mackenzie shared her feminist views and switched her political orientation from major party to conservative third party. Mackenzie worked at a biotesting company in Salt Lake City. Mackenzie wanted to pursue a career in health sciences, discussed with her counselors plans to attend nursing or medical school, and expected to graduate in May 2020. The Mackenzie family lived a normal life until everything changed on June 17, 2019. On that day, Mackenzie returned to Salt Lake City, Utah, after her grandmother's funeral. She arrived at Salt Lake City International Airport around 2 a.m. and texted her mother, "Just landed and love you, Mom." When her mother Diana answered a few moments later, Diana discovered that Mackenzie's phone was turned off. Her father Gregory also tried to call Mackenzie but was routed to her voicemail, causing Mackenzie's family to become very concerned for her safety. On June 20th, Mackenzie's parents realized that her friends had not seen or heard from her either. Mackenzie's friends reported her missing to the Salt Lake City Police Department. Over the next 2 weeks, while Mackenzie's parents Diana, Gregory, and their 3 sons tried everything they could to find Mackenzie in California, Mackenzie's Alpha Kappa Omega sorority sisters organized search efforts in Utah. They even created a Facebook page called Find Mackenzie Lewick to attract national media attention to the case. As police searched for clues about Mackenzie, they discovered video footage of Mackenzie at the airport. She was then picked up by a Lyft driver and taken to Hatch Park in North Salt Lake, about 13 miles away. Police checked Mackenzie's cell phone records, confirming that Mackenzie had been at the park. Police also discovered that Mackenzie had exchanged several text messages with a person named AAE, whom she had allegedly met on a dating website and planned to meet in person. Mackenzie's last text message to AAE was sent at 2:58 a.m. Cell phone records showed that both Mackenzie and AAE were at Hatch Park at the same time. Notably, at 2:59 a.m., Mackenzie's phone stopped transmitting data or location information, indicating that the phone had been turned off. Police tracked AAE's cell phone signal, which led them from the park to his home at 547 North 1000 West in a Fair Park neighborhood. Police found that AAE's cell phone was at his home at 3:07 a.m., just 7 to 8 minutes after he picked up Mackenzie from the park. Since AAE was the prime suspect in Mackenzie's disappearance, police decided to execute a search warrant at his home. During the search, police discovered a newly dug area in the backyard. Inside this area, they found burned human bones, muscle tissue, and charred personal items. In a nearby alley, police also discovered charred fabric and other items belonging to the victim. After the DNA from the bones matched the DNA profile of the items found, police identified the victim as Mackenzie. A neighbor reported a foul odor coming from a campfire in AAE's backyard, which was also fueled by gasoline, on June 17th and again on June 18th. This is where police found a shallow grave containing bones and tissue. Police impounded AAE's car after detecting a strong smell of gasoline and finding a red gas can in the trunk. They discovered that a can of gasoline had been purchased at a local store at 9 a.m. the day Mackenzie went missing. After arresting AAE, police checked his cell phone records, which showed AAE's phone was in Logan Canyon, a location where he buried Mackenzie's body on June 25, Between 2:30 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. police searched the area and found freshly disturbed soil in a wooded area near the main road, where they discovered a charred human body. On July 3rd, the medical examiner confirmed that the body was that of Mackenzie. Her hands had been bound behind her back with zip ties and rope. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the left side of the skull, and her death was classified as a homicide. On October 7, 2020, AAE pleaded guilty to first-degree aggravated murder and third-degree indignity to a human body in connection with Mackenzie's death. AAE was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 5 years for indecent assault on Mackenzie. AAE was also charged with kidnapping another woman in March 2018, whom AAE met on a dating website. In addition, AAE was charged with 19 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. These charges arose in August 2019 when police discovered child pornography on AAE's computer while investigating Mackenzie's death on July 2nd. The images reportedly showed children aged between 4 and 8. On October 1, 2020, AAE pleaded not guilty to these charges and the pornography charges were eventually dismissed. The tragic death of Mackenzie Lueck has had a profound impact on her family, friends, and the entire nation. Her cheerful personality, zest for life, and desire to make a positive impact were suddenly ended by a senseless act of violence. Mackenzie's story serves as an important reminder to always be cautious and safe, especially when using online dating services. Rest in peace, Mackenzie Lueck. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Kenneth Keith. Michael Hawkinsmith, 35, was born in Danville, Kentucky. He was a well-known pastor at a local church where he lived. After working at the church for a long time, he decided to work at a local pawn shop called ABC while continuing to work as a part-time pastor. After a while, due to the previous owner's health issues, Michael had to take over the entire pawn shop. Being an honest and helpful person, he easily connected with people. In his personal life, Michael was married to Angela, and the two had 2 children together, Andrew and Naomi. Michael and Angela jointly owned the ABC Gold, Games and More pawn shop in Danville, Kentucky. They homeschooled their 9-year-old son Andrew and took care of their newborn daughter Naomi. Andrew often visited his parents' workplace and considered it his playground. However, on the morning of September 20, 2013, the Hawkinsmiths went to the ABC store. The morning went as planned. Dan Smith, a regular at the pawn shop, made a scheduled visit. Smith, known as the Gold Man, was known for buying and selling gold between pawn shops across the state. About 15 minutes after opening, as Michael and Smith were making their transactions, a bearded man entered the store and ordered everyone to get on the ground, followed by horrific events. Andrew, who was at the ABC store at the time, after being instructed by his mother, Angela, to hide, noticed the tense situation and quickly called the police to report the situation. 6 minutes after the alarm call, the police arrived at the scene of the murder. When they entered the building, they found a large trail of blood that led them to Michael Hawkinsmith. They then found his wife, Angela, 38, and another victim, Dan Smith, 60, a broker, on the other side of the counter. All 3 victims had suffered serious injuries from gunshot wounds to the head and torso. Police later found Andrew, 9, and Naomi, 14 months, hiding in a closet. Andrew and Naomi had been through unimaginable horror and were orphaned, having lost both their parents. When examining the crime scene, police found 14 spent shell casings and 3 intact bullets, along with a briefcase belonging to Dan Smith. Remarkably, the victim's personal belongings and all the cash in the cash register were untouched, suggesting that robbery was not the motive. The case was complicated by the lack of surveillance cameras at the pawn shop. Therefore, police had to search for potential witnesses. An employee of Rainbow Cleaners, a nearby dry cleaner, provided vital information when he described a vehicle that had been parked near the building that morning. The vehicle was a silver pickup truck driven by a large man with a bushy beard. While one team of investigators searched the area, another team had to notify the victims' closest relatives of the tragedy. Michael's parents were devastated by the news. However, they also felt blessed to know that their grandchildren, Andrew and Naomi, had survived. The tragic news reached the daughter of the third victim, Dan Smith. Dan Smith was involved in the purchase of precious metals and was well versed in the specifics of his job, which made it easy for him to find common ground with different people. His business involved handling large amounts of cash, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. This led police to suspect that Dan Smith may have been the criminal's primary target. Through surveillance, police discovered that before going to the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop, Dan Smith had gone to the Lawson Jewelry Store in Harrodsburg, 10 miles northeast of Danville. Inside the jewelry store, investigators found a surveillance camera mounted on the far wall that was monitoring every customer who entered and exited the store. Their goal was to determine if anyone was following Dan Smith. At 8:16 a.m., Dan Smith entered the store, and there were no other customers in the building at the time. Dan Smith was carrying a briefcase identical to the one later found at the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop. After greeting the woman behind the counter with a smile, he walked toward the back of the store. Moments later, Dan Smith reappeared in the footage, exiting the back of the store, chatting briefly with an elderly woman who had just entered, and then leaving immediately. Footage from the exterior camera did not show anything suspicious. The police could do nothing but monitor the man, unaware that he would soon be at the center of a tragic event. Meanwhile, Andrew Hawkinsmith was brought to the police station to testify. Andrew told the story of how he was at the pawn shop with his parents when Dan Smith came in with a bag full of money. While Michael and Dan were talking, a stranger walked in and demanded the bag of money immediately. According to Andrew, Dan Smith immediately gave the stranger his bag of money. Andrew said that his father asked the man to stop, but the man also shot his father with a handgun similar to the one Andrew often played with. After that, his mother instructed him to take his younger sister, Naomi, to the back of the store and hide in the closet. Andrew picked up his sister and hid. At that moment, the criminal pointed the gun at Angela. The 9-year-old boy thought the reason the stranger did this might be because of the money. The boy described the stranger as a very tall man with a fake-looking blonde beard, which matched the description given by a witness from Rainbow Cleaners. In investigating the case, police thoroughly investigated the business run by the Hawkinsmith family. They discovered that the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop had a different owner, Steve Devine. Although he usually attended Friday transactions with Dan Smith, he was absent on the morning of September 20th. This information raised concerns, making determining his whereabouts a top priority. Steve Devine explained that he had an allergic reaction that morning and had to cancel all his appointments. His wife confirmed this story. The alibi and the fact that Steve Devine did not own a silver pickup truck helped eliminate him as a suspect. Steve Devine also explained why there were no surveillance cameras in the pawn shop. According to him, the security system had been removed by the previous owner, Kenneth Allen Keith. The new owner had yet to install a replacement. Kenneth Allen Keith, 48, is a pastor like Michael Hawkinsmith. He sold the pawn shop after being diagnosed with brain cancer. However, He is still the owner of another similar establishment, Gold Rush Buyers, in Pulaski County, near Danville's Bowles district. Their friendship began when Michael worked at a church youth camp and lasted 15 years. The Hockensmiths respected Pastor Kenneth, and he was like a beloved uncle to Andrew. With no significant leads, investigators decided to search the street surveillance systems near ABC Gold Games and More and other pawn shops. They found a camera on the office building of the real estate company Danville Rentals. Surveillance footage captured a silver pickup truck at 8:45 a.m., but the image was too blurry to determine the license plate or make. However, eyewitness testimony from Rainbow Cleaners helped police identify the vehicle. The witness described the vehicle as an older model with a distinctive square body shape. The vehicle in the video also clearly showed a square rear bumper that matched this description. The color, type, and shape of the vehicle all suggested that police had found the vehicle of the criminal. They continued to search surveillance systems farther and farther away from the pawn shop. Finally, at 8:17 a.m., cameras at the local Ephraim McDowell Hospital captured the same vehicle. Investigators were able to determine that it was a silver Dodge pickup truck. Dan Smith's family was also devastated by the loss of their loved one. Despite their grief, they attended the funeral and held back their anger. In search of more clues, the Danville police asked the public to come forward with any information about the crime or the vehicle involved. On September 24th, the police received a call from Tracy Hurl, a pastor in Warren, Michigan. He claimed to be a friend of Kenneth Keith and said that in their last conversation, they had discussed the Danville murders. At that point, Kenneth seemed to have changed. Pastor Kenneth Allen informed Tracy that on that particular day, he was driving to Danville to pick up medication for his wife. Kenneth also expressed guilt over what had happened, as he had given Michael Hockensmith the opportunity to become the owner of his former business. It turned out Kenneth's relationship with the Hockensmith family was not what people thought. Tracy recounted that in a conversation with Kenneth said that Michael was a fraud and that Michael had done everything to take over the business from him. These statements aroused suspicion, leading to Kenneth being named a suspect. To verify Kenneth's alibi, investigators decided to review surveillance footage from the Good Neighbor Pharmacy, where Kenneth said he had purchased medication for his wife at 9:24 a.m. According to the surveillance footage, a man entered the pharmacy. It was Kenneth. But just a few minutes earlier, the man was not wearing a green jacket or a beard, which were easily identifiable features of an attacker. However, this did not rule out the possibility that Kenneth was involved in the attack. There was a 6-minute gap between Andrew Hockensmith's call to the police and Kenneth's arrival at the pharmacy. The police decided to check whether it was possible to travel from the crime scene to the Good Neighbor Pharmacy in such a short time. They found that the trip took about 5 minutes, so Kenneth could have committed the murder, quickly gotten in the car, and gone to the pharmacy to establish a solid alibi. In addition, the main clue was that Kenneth had an unregistered 2008 Dodge pickup truck, silver in color. However, all the evidence found was circumstantial and not enough to make an arrest. So the investigators asked Tracy Hurl to participate in a series of fake phone calls aimed at Kenneth. Fortunately, Tracy agreed. During these calls, Kenneth finally revealed his true feelings towards the Hockensmith family. Everyone had been waiting for this to happen. Kenneth began discussing details of the case that had not been made public. Kenneth said that he was in Danville, but he was at the pharmacy. Kenneth confirmed that he was standing in the pharmacy while all this was happening. Kenneth then explained that he had left Danville and returned to Somerset. He then drove to the car wash to prepare for a planned family vacation. At 10:50 a.m., Kenneth was seen on camera walking down the hallway to the cash register with a noticeable smile. Exterior camera footage covering the parking lot showed Pastor Kenneth leaving the car wash in the same silver Dodge at 11:25 a.m., matching all previous images captured by various surveillance systems in Danville. At that point, they had enough evidence to arrest Kenneth. However, when he was offered a lie detector test to clarify his role in the case, he reacted in an unusual way. He claimed that he would not be able to pass a lie detector test because, during his military service, he had performed some special missions that involved killing a number of people. Investigators then executed a search warrant at Kenneth Allen Keith's pawn shop and discovered some important evidence. They found a fake beard and a significant amount of cash without any legal explanation as to how he had obtained it. In particular, they also found bundles of money wrapped in a ribbon with the name of the bank that issued them, indicating that Dan Smith was a customer. Further investigation revealed that the money found in Keith's pawn shop had recently been withdrawn from the account of a deceased broker. This raised suspicions about Keith's involvement in the case. In addition, investigators also found several .22 caliber shell casings in Keith's pawn shop. After ballistic analysis, they discovered that these casings had been fired from the same type of weapon used to shoot Andrew and Naomi's parents. Kenneth Allen Keith was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and robbery. He believed that Michael Hawkinsmith and Steve Dine were conspiring to remove him from the business. However, there was no evidence that Michael Hawkinsmith and Steve Dine were involved in any conspiracy. When Kenneth met Dan Smith at the pawn shop, he tried to create a fake plan to make the police think that the case was a robbery. However, the plan failed when the police investigated and found no evidence of suspicious activities by Michael Hawkinsmith and Steve Dine. On September 20th, Kenneth arrived in Danville in his silver Dodge Caravan. He circled the pawn shop until he saw Dan Smith's car parked nearby. Kenneth then killed Dan Smith, Michael Hawkinsmith, and Angela Hawkinsmith. After taking all the cash, Kenneth calmly left the crime scene and stopped at the Good Neighbor Pharmacy, which was captured on surveillance cameras, creating a false alibi. Kenneth's decision to have his car washed appears to have been another attempt to remove any evidence that might have been left on the car. Prior to sentencing, in 2017, Kenneth Allen Keith pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Valentina Tres Palacios. Valentina Tres Palacios was born on December 16, 2001, in Bogota, Colombia. She is currently studying international business and commerce, but her true passion is music. Since childhood, she has loved music and pursued this passion by studying and becoming a professional DJ. After receiving her DJ certificate, Valentina started her career in Colombia and quickly made a name for herself due to her talent and exceptional musicality. Throughout her career, she has made many friends from different countries. Valentina has had the opportunity to travel to many countries to perform and showcase her talent. She has performed with famous musicians and has toured more than 20 cities in her country. She has also participated in important international events, including festivals in Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and Peru. With her talent and musicality, Valentina has been recognized as having a bright future ahead. She is loved and sought after across the country and regularly performs at top nightclubs. Valentina is a cheerful young woman who is always smiling and loves to party. She also maintains social media accounts where she shares her performances and updates her followers on her daily life. Valentina shares 2 important aspects of her life on social media: her growing popularity in the music industry and her romantic relationship with John Poulos, an American she met online in late 2021. As their relationship progressed, their communication improved significantly. Initially, Valentina was not looking for a serious relationship, but she eventually became attracted to John, and their relationship turned into a romance. John Poulos, a resident of the United States, showed a deep interest in Valentina's life. Valentina invested a lot in their relationship, and John supported her financially to help achieve her dreams. Valentina took a cosmetic course, which included hyaluronic acid injections into her lips, and later, enhancements to her cheekbones. John also recommended surgery in silicone breast implants, which significantly changed her appearance within a few months. These changes made Valentina the talk of the town. John sent her money regularly and eventually decided to marry her. John Poulos initially planned to move to Colombia to live with Valentina. However, Valentina became suspicious of the relationship because she knew that John was extremely jealous and had hired a private investigator to monitor her every contact and activity. By January 2023, John had committed to marrying Valentina and began arranging the necessary paperwork. He had also rented an apartment in the northern part of Bogota, where he planned to spend weekends with Valentina until they found a permanent place to live. However, on January 22, 2023, a garbage collector discovered a blue suitcase in a dumpster near a park in Colombia. The suitcase was taped shut and surrounded by several trash bags. When the worker opened the suitcase, they discovered the body of a woman whose head was clearly visible inside. The worker was so frightened by the discovery that he drove several blocks away before calling the police. The Capitol Police Department quickly dispatched a team to investigate the incident. The officers who arrived at the scene witnessed a horrific sight. The victim's body was found in a suitcase. After several hours of investigation, the police identified the victim as Valentina Tres Palacios. An initial examination of the body showed no signs of violence, no weapons or knives were found, and there was no dismemberment. However, after opening the suitcase, detectives discovered that the victim was wearing pajamas with a belt. This suggested that the victim may have been attacked while she was sleeping. Additionally, police found a black cardboard box inside the suitcase containing items that could help identify the body, including a student ID card, a password that the victim often used, and several other documents and personal belongings. Investigators discovered something strange among the items they collected. These types of documents are not often found in similar cases. After finding the suitcase containing the body, the police contacted Valentina's family and learned that she had attended a party with friends on Saturday, January 21st. Forensic examination results showed that she had been hit multiple times in the head. Her body was found with severe injuries, including heavy bleeding on the right side of her tongue and 5 cuts around her neck, indicating that she had been strangled. After Valentina's murder, the police began questioning her friends and relatives. They started asking questions about Valentina's relationships. As a famous DJ with a hot body, she was a very popular and well-connected person. Among those questioned, a friend of Valentina's expressed concern and suspected Valentina's boyfriend, John Poulos, of being involved in the case because of his excessively jealous behavior. At this point, suspicions turned to Valentina's boyfriend, John, and a closer investigation into him was launched. The police initially relied on surveillance cameras around John's home, examining his actions on the days of the crime. John Poulos arrived in Bogota at approximately 8:53 p.m. on January 19th. Surveillance cameras recorded him entering the apartment with a blue suitcase identical to the one used to contain Valentina's body. This information made John the first suspect to come to the attention of the police, as he was also the last person to see Valentina alive. When detectives attempted to contact John, the call was routed to voicemail. Valentina's family had appreciated John's calm and kind personality, and they did not think he was involved in this terrible crime, especially since John and Valentina had a wedding planned. Suspicions about John grew when investigators visited his rental apartment. There, they discovered that John had left and was nowhere to be found on Monday, January 23rd. It is worth noting that John Poulos deleted his social media pages early in the morning after Valentina's death, making him the only suspect at the time. Investigators analyzed surveillance camera footage in the building from Friday evening to early Sunday morning. This helped them clarify the events that took place. The Colombian police and the prosecutor's office also reviewed several hours of video footage from cameras in the area where Valentina and John were. Camera footage and WhatsApp conversations played a key role in uncovering Valentina's final hours. Valentina and John were scheduled to meet on January 20th. John arrived on the 19th, cleaned the apartment they would share, and then texted Valentina. Valentina and John began arguing that night because Valentina was partying while he was away. John questioned whether Valentina was with any men. Valentina refused to answer, believing he was jealous and suspicious. John eventually reminded Valentina to meet on the 20th. Before the meeting, Valentina planned to visit some beauty salons for eyelash and hair extensions to feel more confident. However, on the 20th, Valentina and John disagreed about the date and only clarified their plans when surveillance cameras recorded activities at Valentina's apartment that evening. According to the surveillance cameras, on the 20th, John helped Valentina pack her luggage at 6 p.m. when the two moved into their new home. Valentina also made a video call to her mother and said she would return after the trip. The video also showed Valentina with John Poulos, who had rented a car to transport Valentina's belongings. Valentina and John were caught on surveillance footage entering her new apartment at 7 p.m. Valentina and John were caught on camera engaging in some activities before heading home. It was Saturday, January 21st, at 1 a.m. They took a taxi to a nightclub in southeast New York where Valentina was performing. When they arrived at the nightclub around 4 a.m., Valentina immediately started working. John Poulos stayed with her while she got ready. At around 5 a.m., Valentina's performance ended, and they then went into the club's office to meet the owner, his wife, and a companion. Valentina and John left the club around 6 a.m. That was the last time Valentina's friends saw her. She walked out of the club smiling and seemingly fine. Valentina reached out to a friend by phone on Saturday and said she had no plans to go anywhere. She planned to stay home with John and perhaps go out to dinner or cook together. Valentina's last conversation with her friend was via video at 9 p.m. Valentina's mother, Laura Hidalgo, said her 13-year-old son was the last person to talk to Valentina via video. Valentina was lying in bed with John, and they appeared happy. The family has no further information about their situation. On January 21st, at 10:43 p.m., surveillance cameras in the building recorded Valentina and John. Valentina was looking out of the apartment door while John stood in front of it, looking pensive, pacing back and forth, and occasionally grimacing. John was again caught on camera on Sunday, January 22nd, at 9 a.m. This time, he left the room with 2 bags of trash, and Valentina was not seen. John then drove to the parking lot, picked up a silver car, and put the bags in the back seat. Next, he returned to the apartment, took 2 suitcases from the trunk, and brought them back to the apartment. At the apartment, a gray blanket was placed on top of the suitcase that John had taken out. It was 10 a.m. He put this suitcase on the cart for transport. A second bag was placed next to it, and in this bag was Valentina's head wrapped in a blanket. Before leaving, John observed the parking lot after parking and noticed that there was no one nearby. He also checked the area around the elevator to make sure no one was getting off. Then he quickly returned to the car and tried to lift the heavy suitcase into the trunk. Finally, he took the bag and put it in the car, then drove away. The surveillance camera recorded the car circulating at various points in the city. Around noon, John appeared to be looking for a safe place to dump the suitcase. The car then pulled into a parking lot and parked near a dumpster. At 3 p.m., John got out of the car, looked around to see if anyone was following him, then took out the suitcase, which appeared to be very heavy, and threw it into the dumpster. He then returned to the car, took out a bag, and placed it in the dumpster before closing the lid and exiting the parking lot. The car then traveled west until it reached El Dorado International Airport, where John was last seen at 4:30 p.m. The Department of Homeland Security announced a $1 million reward on Monday, January 23, for information leading to the arrest of John Tres Palacios. Colombian authorities sought Interpol's assistance in issuing an arrest warrant for John as he fled the country's borders. On January 24, Panamanian National Police arrested John at El Dorado International Airport, just as he was preparing to leave for Turkey. Colombian authorities quickly began the process of deporting John from the country after Valentina's death. More than 14 criminal investigators were involved in the investigation, gathering evidence to clarify the truth. The result of this investigation included the analysis of more than 300 hours of video footage from security cameras, conducted in cooperation with the Public Prosecutor's Office. An important discovery in the case was the finding of Valentina's cell phone near El Dorado International Airport. A security guard happened to see the phone on the grass while walking near a gas station and picked it up. After realizing that the phone did not have a SIM card, he took it home with the intention of selling it, not knowing it belonged to Valentina. However, the security guard's wife called him after realizing that the photo of the girl on the phone's wallpaper matched the photos seen on social media, as well as the photo of the young woman found dead in the trash. Unfortunately, the phone was put up for sale and repackaged because someone wanted to buy it. After leaving the nightclub, John and Valentina's driver gave his statement. The driver had been assigned to take Valentina and John to a nightclub in the south of the city. When John stopped for a moment, Valentina got into the car and shouted that she had written something. When the driver looked at her, Valentina seemed uncertain, and the driver checked his phone. The driver discovered that Valentina had warned him that she was in danger in a Spanish text message to customer service. John then asked Valentina if she was okay. While the car was being driven, John and Valentina conversed in English. The driver asked them if they were bilingual, and they answered yes. When they left around 4 a.m. that same day, the driver went to the nightclub with the couple. He then knew nothing about the incident until he was informed of Valentina's death a few days later. In the WhatsApp version open on Valentina's computer, a friend of Valentina's in Caragana provided the prosecutor's office in Bogota with conversations on Valentina's computer, which offered clues about what happened. One of the key pieces of evidence found in the investigation of Valentina's case was a discovery by one of her friends, who found the suitcase containing her body. This suitcase was believed to have been in the same location as Valentina's. The friend also said that on the day Valentina was in Bogota, she received messages from John Poulos and several selfies of him with the luggage. The suitcase John was carrying was very similar to the one investigators found in the case, though the color was indistinguishable. While it is unclear why Valentina left the WhatsApp session open on her friend's computer, the messages helped investigators understand what happened at night when Valentina was killed. Forensic investigators determined that she died of asphyxiation due to being strangled with a rope. There were also signs of violence on her body. The autopsy revealed that Valentina died in her sleep. Criminologists came to this conclusion because she was wearing pajamas. All the evidence pointed to John Poulos being present at the scene. However, in the indictment, John did not admit responsibility for Valentina's death. He argued that his arrest in Panama was illegal because he did not have a lawyer to assist him. John was not proficient enough in Spanish, and a translator was not present during the 5-hour hearing. John was charged with involvement in Valentina's death and deleted his social media accounts. John Poulos was born on May 19, 1987, in Wisconsin, USA. He is married and has 3 children. However, he also has a criminal record related to violence against women, including a restraining order from his ex-wife. One of the women who had a relationship with John Poulos revealed that he frequently visited pornographic websites, spending up to 5 to 6 hours a day on them. She also commented that John often exhibited strange behavior, such as fantasizing in telling ghost stories. Another model who interacted with John Poulos on social media said that she knew him as being from Texas, USA. She stopped contacting him after he made a strange comment, including the words jealous and death. Specifically, John asked her, "If I was at a bar, would you be willing to talk to me?" When the woman refused, John replied, "There's a chance one of us will die of jealousy." The woman also said that although John donated money to her, she never chatted with him via video because his communication style was often erratic. It's important to note that John also displayed some suspicious behavior towards Valentina. He contacted Valentina on social media and began sending her money persistently and consistently. In this case, treating women like property was a red flag that the women overlooked, and they initially trusted him. John thought he could buy their trust with money from the start. Authorities investigating the case believe that John Poulos thought that the waste disposal system in Colombia was similar to that in the United States, where he lived. In his mind, the waste would settle in a container and eventually be disposed of. However, Poulos overlooked the fact that recyclers and people living on the streets regularly rummage through trash looking for items they can sell or use. John Poulos is currently being held in a separate cell in Bogotá. The next step is to prove that all the evidence links him to the crime and to find the real motive behind this horrific murder in Colombia. The criminal code stipulates a prison sentence of up to 50 years for the crime John was charged with. John Poulos was subsequently sentenced to 42 years and 8 months in prison, was banned from approaching or attempting to contact the Tres Palacios family for 20 years, and was ordered to be deported from Colombia after serving his sentence. John's defense team said they would appeal the verdict. They argued that John was innocent of Valentina's murder. Valentina's situation is similar to many others. She thought she had found true love, but it turned out to be a mistake. Does anyone feel safe connecting with strangers on social media? Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Elle Edwards. Elle Edwards, a 26-year-old woman, she was a vibrant and beautiful young woman who worked as a cosmetologist at a local beauty salon and assisted a dermatologist. Her positive attitude and kindness have helped her win the hearts and satisfaction of all her customers, even the most difficult ones. Edwards is a highly skilled beauty professional, known for being cheerful and always smiling. At the same time, she was determined and constantly working towards her goals and dreams. On December 24, 2022, her sister Lucy flew in from Dubai to spend the holidays with their family, and Edwards eagerly awaited her return. To celebrate this special occasion, Edwards, her sister, and their friends decided to go to the local pub in Liverpool's Wallasey Village, UK. Here they were having a fantastic time, laughing, dancing, and singing karaoke in a joyful atmosphere. Without their knowledge, someone with ill intentions was nearby. As they exited the pub at approximately 11:50 p.m., someone placed an emergency call. Shortly thereafter, a minimum of 12 shots were fired. Edwards was struck by 2 bullets, and she's suffering a severe head wound. The emergency services were immediately dispatched to the scene. They quickly loaded Edwards into an ambulance and rushed her to the local hospital. Unfortunately, she succumbed to her injuries en route, as they were fatal. When the police informed Edwards's family of the tragedy, they were shocked and disbelieving. No one could comprehend how this could have happened to Edwards, a beautiful and lively young woman. It was unthinkable that she could have had enemies who wished her harm. In the early stages of the investigation, detectives had no leads. The attacker launched a surprise assault and then quickly disappeared, leaving behind a single shell casing in the victim, who was severely bleeding at the location where the crime occurred. The assault was swift yet clearly premeditated, affording Edwards no opportunity for survival. However, it was unclear whether the attacker meant to target Edwards or if Edwards was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time and got hurt by someone who was mentally unstable. A car of unknown origin pulled up near the entrance of the pub, and shortly thereafter, gunfire erupted. Apart from the fatality, 4 other men sustained gunshot wounds of varying degrees. All of the victims were young adults, aged between 22 and 33. Police initially believed Edwards may have been a random victim of the attack. It was known that criminal gangs operated in the area and the shooting might have been a confrontation between gang members. However, this was just speculation that needed to be confirmed or ruled out during the investigation. To learn more, the detectives looked into Edwards's background. Like the witnesses, Edwards's relatives had no idea who would want she dead. The detectives planned to speak with more witnesses and those who had been shot at by the unknown criminal. They also asked the pub owner for security footage. The investigation involves conducting interviews with numerous individuals and thoroughly reviewing extensive video footage. Multiple police officers were working on the case. It was necessary to answer several difficult questions following the attack. The large number of victims raised concerns about whether the attack was a spontaneous act of aggression or a targeted assault. To investigate, all witnesses were interviewed, and authorities began analyzing mobile communications data, which proved to be a time-consuming task. The media was alerted to aid in the investigation. Law enforcement officers appealed to the public for assistance, urging anyone with valuable information to come forward and visit the police station. Specifically, they were looking for any video recordings that might have been taken by eyewitnesses, which could potentially show the car used by the perpetrator. To encourage people to share any relevant information, the police held a meeting with local residents. It was assumed that someone might have witnessed the attack or have information about the perpetrator. To encourage people to come forward, community leaders reassured residents that they should not be intimidated by the criminals or the local feuding clans. The police visited residents door to door to gather information and provide support. Specially trained officers worked with Edwards's family to provide emotional support during this difficult time. Through their efforts, it was discovered that the perpetrator had left the pub parking lot in a dark-colored car. Although witness accounts were limited due to the darkness, the vehicle was most likely a dark Mercedes. Later, outdoor surveillance cameras confirmed the events. The killer drove into the parking lot, but didn't immediately open fire. Instead, he observed the pub visitors for some time from his car, which was positioned to give him a clear view of the entrance and most of what was happening inside. He seemed to be waiting for the most convenient moment to attack. After a few minutes, when Edwards got out, the killer quickly got out of the car, fired 12 shots in a row, then immediately got back in and drove away. Investigators studied the recordings and concluded that the attacker acted alone, without any backup. Unfortunately, it was impossible to determine exactly where the perpetrator fled. The detectives conducted a thorough investigation, going door to door to speak with local residents, providing a detailed description of the car and the circumstances surrounding the incident. Their goal was to identify the killer. The streets were patrolled 24/7, and within 2 days, they had detained 2 suspects. However, their involvement in the crime couldn't be proven without proof. The detectives then made a public statement, vowing to continue their pursuit of the unknown shooter until they were brought to justice. This was intended to reassure local residents, who were outraged by the rising crime rates and the authorities' seeming inability to stop it. There was speculation that the attack may have been sparked by a feud between local gangs, with Edwards being an innocent bystander. However, this theory was still unconfirmed and required further investigation. It was determined that the intended targets of the shooting may have been Jake and Curran, 2 members of the local Beechwood gang who were at the pub that evening. They had a long-standing and intense feud with another group vying for control of the territory. On December 29th, police arrested a person of interest, but he was not the shooter. Although he had a solid alibi, the detective suspected that he may have been involved in planning the attack. Around the same time, authorities identified the dark Mercedes car used by the killer to leave the pub's parking lot. However, due to a lack of direct evidence, the name of a third suspect was not released. The car was tracked through surveillance footage and identified with the help of cameras. However, the police were unable to respond in time. On December 31st, a report was filed with the police department stating that a fire had started near the scene of the shooting. When the special services arrived at the scene, they found a dark Mercedes engulfed in flames, which resembled the perpetrator's vehicle. The fire had completely burned out the vehicle, destroying valuable evidence. It's clear the perpetrators knew the police were closing in, so they intentionally destroyed one of the key pieces of evidence. Although the fire didn't completely destroy the car, investigators confirmed it was used during the shooting. However, the Mercedes had been stolen shortly before the attack and didn't belong to the perpetrators. The arson was likely committed to hinder the investigation. Following the January 11th murder, police took 2 more suspects into custody in Central Wales, Connor Chapman, 22, and a 23-year-old woman. Connor was a familiar figure to police, with his extensive criminal record. Before the murder of Edwards, Connor began his downward spiral into a life of crime with increasingly bold lawbreakings. His early offenses included a car theft under severe circumstances, and he was repeatedly suspected of robbery, hooliganism, and making threats. At one point, Connor led police on a high-speed chase before ditching the car and hiding in nearby bushes. Upon being caught, he feigned innocence, claiming he had no idea what the officers were talking about and was simply waiting for a friend. This brazen act earned him a degree of notoriety, landing his details in newspaper headlines. Connor Chapman, a resident of Birkenhead, Liverpool, was raised by his grandparents after being abandoned by his parents at a young age. He moved into their house and struggled academically, eventually dropping out of high school before his exams. As a teenager, Connor was considered a troublemaker and had his first brush with the law in 2014, when he was 14 years old, for shoplifting. 2 years later, in 2016, Connor committed another offense by stealing a car. He was caught driving the stolen vehicle without a license or insurance, violating the terms of his suspended sentence. In 2017, he was convicted of possession of a controlled substance, while also violating a restraining order by entering areas of the city he was banned from, all under police surveillance. Connor was prohibited from appearing in public due to the risk he posed to society. However, in 2018, he disregarded the ban and was detained by the authorities while in possession of a knife and banned substances. The same year, Connor Chapman came to the attention of the general public after a failed attempt to evade the police in a stolen vehicle. The incident occurred when the city patrols spotted a stolen Audi and instructed the driver to stop and exit the vehicle with hands raised. However, 18-year-old Connor refused to comply, leading to a pursuit. During the brief chase, Connor committed multiple traffic offenses, including exceeding 80 km/h in 30 km/h zones, repeatedly driving into oncoming traffic, and ultimately crashing into the curb at high speed. The impact sent the car careening to the side and spinning around. Unable to continue, Connor exited the vehicle and fled on foot. However, the patrol caught up with him in the bushes just a few hundred meters away. Connor claimed he was waiting for a friend, but it was clear he was not telling the truth. In court, Connor's lawyer explained that his client had been influenced by a group of older friends who were a bad influence. The court decided not to punish Connor and released him. It was discovered that he had attention deficit disorder, along with several other conditions, which were diagnosed by a private specialist. Connor in question was sentenced to up to 8 months in prison due to numerous traffic violations and reckless behavior. Additionally, he was banned from driving after his release. By the time he reached adulthood, he had accumulated 14 convictions for 30 separate offenses, demonstrating a clear pattern of disregard for the law and social norms. It is clear that he has no intention of reforming and constantly refuses to conform to the rules and norms of society. Although his behavior was recognized as potentially hazardous, there were no sufficient legal grounds to isolate him from the community, primarily because his actions had not yet resulted in serious harm to anyone. The public expressed anger and frustration with the authorities for not taking action against Connor Chapman, a man with multiple convictions. Despite his numerous run-ins with the law, he continued to commit crimes, putting innocent lives at risk. In January 2020, he was sentenced to 10 months in prison for possession of a cold weapon and substances in a public place. The police publicly warned the community about him, and after serving his sentence, he was wanted for at least 5 more crimes. When caught, Connor boasted about spending more time in prison than out, seemingly proud of his record. By 20, he had accumulated 19 sentences for 43 crimes. However, he was released again in the summer of 2022, just 6 months before the death of L. Edwards. During this time, he appeared in court again, and his lawyer attempted to garner sympathy by sharing that Connor's first child was born while he was in prison. At this point, Connor's girlfriend was pregnant with a baby girl. He claimed to have turned his around and wanted to make amends, but this was just a ruse. In reality, he wanted to escape and return to his life of crime. The police were already aware of his involvement with a local gang that sold prohibited substances, but he was being tried for a lesser offense, the burglary and theft of 2 electric motorcycles. On December 24th, a violent altercation erupted between 2 rival gangs in Beechwood Estates, near the wooden church. The gangs were fighting over territory, but failed to reach an agreement. Seeking revenge, a young gangster armed himself with a submachine gun and waited 3 hours to track down his targets, Kieran and Jake Duffy, who were at the Moke pub. Just before midnight, he drove to the parking lot, identified his victims, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. Then he exited the car and fired 12 bullets into the building. Duffy was seriously injured, but he survived despite the life-threatening attack. However, L. Edwards was not as fortunate. She was hit by 2 bullets in the head. Edwards fought for her life, but she died in the medic's arms on the way to the hospital. Edwards had unintentionally crossed paths with the killer's targets that evening and had no idea the night would end so tragically. The pub was crowded at the time of the attack, 1 person was killed, and 4 others were wounded. A 22-year-old man was shot in the leg, a 24-year-old man was wounded in the arm, and a 33-year-old man was injured in the wrist. Fortunately, none of these injuries were life-threatening. Edwards's friends tried to provide her with first aid and performed CPR at the scene. Unfortunately, their efforts were not enough to save her life. Edwards's sister, Lucy, was much luckier. She had been living in Dubai and had flown home to celebrate Christmas with her family just minutes before the attack. She had already left the pub, so she was not affected at all. Later, Lucy recalled how she had wanted to take her sister with her, but Edwards had wanted to stay with her friends. On January 25, 2023, a funeral was held for Edwards, who was tragically killed in a gang-related incident. Hundreds of people attended to pay their respects to the innocent victim. A hearse pulled by 4 white horses carried her body to the local church. As a sign of respect, the pub where she had last celebrated was closed for the day. The pub's owner also shared a message of support for her family on social media. Connor Chapman was subsequently charged with multiple offenses, including murder. It was discovered that Connor had an accomplice, 20-year-old Thomas. A video recording was found on Thomas during the searches, made shortly before the attack. In the video, Connor is seen handing over a weapon and stating his intention to settle accounts with someone. After the attack, Connor and Thomas hid the stolen Mercedes together, planning to dispose of it later. Although the murder weapon was never found, DNA traces from the killer were detected on one of the shell casings. It became clear that Connor had loaded the weapon before the attack, as evidenced by the presence of red gloves found at his house, which were visible in CCTV footage from Moke. After committing the crime, Connor and Thomas abandoned their car and ordered a taxi under a false name to throw off investigators. They used the taxi service to cover their tracks. At approximately 5 a.m., they went back to the location where they had hidden the car in order to take additional steps to cover their tracks and hide their involvement. Thomas Nord was found guilty of all charges in July 2023 and received a 9-year prison sentence. The relatively lenient sentence was due to his limited prior criminal history compared to Connor. Jake and Kieran, members of the local Beechwood gang, were wounded during the attack but managed to survive. Given their gang affiliation and the ongoing conflict with a rival group, the violent incident was not unexpected. It became known that on December 23, 2023, Connor Chapman's group, including Kieran and his friend, were attacked and beaten by another individual from the same group. Although they did not receive serious injuries, this incident occurred just a day before they were attacked with firearms. At the time, they seemed to view the beating as a random altercation and subsequently went to a pub to relax. After the shooting incident, while the shooter, Connor, awaited sentencing for the murder of an innocent victim, Kieran and his friend were already imprisoned. Kieran received a 27-month sentence for attacking members of a rival criminal group and an additional 9 months for the fight. His friend was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months for a similar offense. It appeared that Kieran and his friend were attempting to avenge the attempted murder. As a result, prohibitive court orders were issued against them, imposing various restrictions. Although this approach did not prevent the gang from engaging in further criminal activities, it did provide a basis for more severe punishment if they continued to disregard the court orders. The public was outraged that gang members received lenient sentences despite committing multiple crimes. It became clear that the existing bans were ineffective in maintaining public safety. For instance, Connor was banned from visiting the area where the pub was located, but he still managed to steal a car and enter the pub despite having a driving ban. During the trial for L. Edwards' murder, Connor attempted to dispute the claim that he was the person seen in the CCTV footage. He claimed that at the time, he was at home wrapping Christmas gifts. Nevertheless, sufficient evidence was collected to expose the facts. The hearings lasted 3.5 weeks, exposing all the incident leading up to the attack. It was discovered that the motive behind the attack was a turf war between 2 rival gangs. Connor had no connection to L. Edwards, he was completely indifferent to her fate, as well as the fate of the other innocent people in the bar. He was driven solely by uncontrolled rage. After attempting to murder 2 rivals, Connor planned to escape to Spain to evade capture. He used a stolen car and disposed of the murder weapon, trying to avoid detection by the police. He also avoided using public transportation. Ultimately, detectives apprehended Connor at the airport. After being arrested, Connor attempted to mislead the police by stating that the Mercedes he was seen driving on the day of the murder was not stolen. Instead, he claimed it was a shared vehicle used by his criminal group for distributing substances. He denied being the driver and continued to try to convince the jury that he was not the one who opened fire that evening. In a desperate bid to escape the consequences, Connor claimed he had only just discovered that someone from his group had used the vehicle to attack the pub. Before the jury deliberated on the verdict, Elle Edwards' father gave a heartfelt speech, expressing his hope that the perpetrator would never be able to spend Christmas with his loved ones as a free man again. The jurors, comprised of P. Asen and Sim Janine, reached a unanimous verdict after 3 hours of deliberation. They found Connor Chapman guilty of all charges, citing that he had committed the crime with callous disregard and showed no remorse for the accidental killing of Elle Edwards, taking away her promising life. Rather than showing regret, Connor spent several days systematically eliminating all evidence and traces of the murder that could implicate him. The motive behind the attack was attributed to a rivalry between criminal gangs. On July 7, 2023, Connor was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after serving 48 years of his sentence. After the verdict was announced, Elle Edwards' father raised his fist in triumph. However, the incident sparked widespread public outrage. The city's residents felt unsafe knowing they were caught in the middle of a turf war between rival gangs. These gangs possessed a large number of firearms and had shown a willingness to use them, as evidenced by Elle Edwards' murder. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alyssa Burkett. Alyssa Burkett was born on December 31, 1995, in Mosquito, Texas, to Teresa and Burkett and Joshua Forey. She has 3 older sisters, Nikki, Madison, and Taylor, and 2 older brothers, Landon and Tyler. Alyssa showed creative talent from a young age. At the age of 7, she dreamed of becoming a fashion designer and even made her own clothes. Her grandfather, Russell Forey, a musician, encouraged Alyssa's passion, and at the age of 13, Alyssa decided to change her career path and pursue a career in law. Russell supported Alyssa's decision. After graduating from Royce City High School, Alyssa enrolled in a local college. When she was 18, Alyssa met a boy named Andrew Bird. He was 9 years older than her and seemed to be a mysterious bad boy. Despite her family's objections, Alyssa began pursuing Andrew. The relationship was unstable and complicated. Andrew did not work and relied on Alyssa for support. However, Andrew was very possessive, constantly monitoring Alyssa's every move. Her friends advised her to break up with Andrew many times, but Alyssa did not listen. In January 2019, 23-year-old Alyssa discovered that she was pregnant with Andrew's child. This unexpected pregnancy took Alyssa by surprise and forced her to rethink her future plans. Alyssa suspected that Andrew would not be a good father in the future, so Alyssa decided to break up with Andrew and raise her daughter on her own. Alyssa dropped out of college because of her pregnancy. On December 31, 2019, her 24th birthday, Alyssa gave birth to a healthy baby girl and named her Willow. Despite the challenges ahead, Alyssa is still trying her best to be a good mother. Alyssa often shares family photos on social media platforms. People close to Alyssa describe her as outspoken, energetic, kind, and has a bright smile. Alyssa has worked hard to earn money to take care of her daughter. She is working at Green Tree, a residential real estate company. With the support of her family, especially her grandparents, Alyssa tried to give her daughter a peaceful childhood while staying away from Andrew because she considered him unreliable. However, Andrew refused to give up. He initiated a fierce legal battle to gain custody of Willow, asserting that Andrew would achieve his goals at all costs and nothing could stop him. In April 2020, just 4 months after Willow was born, a woman named Holly Elkins, 22, appeared in Andrew's life. Holly Elkins quickly moved in with Andrew and began planning their life together. Holly Elkins saw Alyssa as a rival and sought to eliminate her from Andrew's life. Alyssa considered herself the best mother for Willow. She began to feel the growing threat from Andrew and his fiancée Holly Elkins. Friends advised Alyssa to be cautious and prepare for the worst. Little did Alyssa know that her life was about to be seriously threatened. As soon as Andrew Bird and Holly Elkins began dating, they immediately launched a plan to bring Alyssa down. Their goal was to ruin Alyssa's reputation and take away Alyssa's custody of their child in order to gain custody of Willow. In text messages, Holly Elkins openly expressed her desire to eliminate Alyssa. Holly Elkins wrote to Andrew that Alyssa was controlling him, making him prioritize Alyssa, and demanding that Andrew show subservience to Alyssa. Holly Elkins viciously criticized Alyssa, calling her a liar, stupid, and a bad mother. Holly Elkins encouraged Andrew to take action against Alyssa, claiming that Alyssa was hindering their family happiness with Willow. Holly Elkins and Andrew installed a GPS tracking device on Alyssa's car to monitor her every move. Holly Elkins then anonymously called 911, falsely reporting that Alyssa was driving erratically in order to discredit her with the police. On another occasion, Holly Elkins went to the police station and falsely accused Alyssa of attacking her. To prove this story, Holly Elkins scratched her chest. The couple also hired a private investigator to find evidence against Alyssa and her new boyfriend. However, the detective did not find any evidence that could incriminate Alyssa, but Holly Elkins and Andrew did not give up. In September 2020, Holly Elkins and Andrew hid drugs and unregistered weapons in Alyssa's car and anonymously reported that Alyssa was trafficking drugs from her car. During the interrogation, Alyssa cried and insisted that she had nothing to do with drugs and immediately suspected Andrew of having a role in the plot, with the aim of discrediting Alyssa in the eyes of the police. Unfortunately, she could not prove it. Holly Elkins and Andrew planned every detail of the crime. On September 10, 2020, Holly Elkins went to a sports store with Andrew. There, Andrew bought a black raincoat with cash, and Holly Elkins helped Andrew choose the right outfit for the crime plan. On September 14, Holly Elkins went to a pharmacy and bought dark foundation and other cosmetics to disguise Andrew. On September 19, Holly Elkins and Andrew stopped by a hardware store where they bought shotgun shells and a large Camillus knife. Both the gun and knife would be used by Andrew to take revenge on his daughter's mother, Alyssa. During the last week of September, Holly Elkins texted Andrew frequently, urging him to carry out the plan. Holly Elkins stressed that they needed to resolve the issue. Holly Elkins knew that their relationship would be in danger if Andrew did not act. Upon receiving the text messages, Andrew put his plan into action. The search history on Andrew's phone showed that he had begun researching how to remove gunpowder residue from his hands after shooting, indicating that Andrew did not want to leave any traces. 6 days before the attack, Alyssa and Andrew purchased a used black Ford Expedition. Andrew told the seller that he would use the car to supervise a school project. On the morning of October 2nd, Andrew disguised himself as another man. Andrew wore a black raincoat and parked his Ford Expedition SUV near Alyssa's home. Through text messages provided by Holly Elkins, Andrew learned Alyssa's daily routine and determined where Andrew could find Alyssa. On the morning of October 2nd, 2020, Alyssa dropped off her 1-year-old daughter, Willow, at her grandmother's house while she was on her way to work at Green Tree Home Management in Carrollton, as she did every day. Alyssa parked her car in front of the office around 9 a.m. and was about to enter the house when a black SUV sped toward her car. Andrew, dressed in a black hoodie, wearing a mask and holding a handgun, attacked Alyssa. She had no chance to react before he approached her and shot her in the head through the window. Alyssa dropped to the steering wheel, her face and hair covered in blood. Despite her serious injuries, Alyssa still had enough strength to open the car door and tried to crawl toward the office door. Alyssa was trying to call for help, but her body was weak and covered in blood. Despite the critical situation, Alyssa showed incredible willpower in her final moments. Andrew quickly returned when he saw movement. He pulled a large hunting knife from his coat and attacked Alyssa, who was on the ground. Andrew grabbed Alyssa's hair and brutally stabbed her multiple times in the neck, chest, and abdomen, totaling at least 13 wounds. Alyssa died on the spot from these severe injuries. When Alyssa's coworkers ran out to the parking lot after hearing her screams, they found Alyssa lying in a pool of blood with her throat slit. They attempted to revive Alyssa using CPR but were unsuccessful. By this time, Andrew had escaped in his black SUV, leaving the bloody weapon at the scene. Witnesses described the attacker as a tall, muscular man dressed all in black with a mask or hood. Many people mistook him for an African American at the time of the attack. According to Holly Elkins, she was at home with Andrew's daughter, Willow, giving her an alibi. Holly Elkins later told police that Andrew was believed to be with her the entire time. The brutal murder, which happened so brazenly in a public place, shocked the people of Carrollton. They were puzzled about the motive for this dangerous crime. However, Alyssa's loved ones and friends immediately suspected Andrew Bird. They knew about the ongoing dispute between Alyssa and Andrew over the custody of their child. Alyssa's mother, holding back tears, reported her suspicions about Andrew to the police. She shared with the police about Andrew's threats and harassment of Alyssa, as well as the long legal battle for custody of her granddaughter. According to her, Andrew had repeatedly stated that Alyssa would not be allowed to raise their daughter Willow. The investigation into Alyssa Burkett's murder was launched. At first, Alyssa's colleagues provided details about the attacker's appearance. This man, despite wearing a mask, was tall, muscular, appeared to be muscular, and some even thought he was African American. The testimony of Alyssa's loved ones made her ex-boyfriend, Andrew Bird, the main subject of the investigation. Alyssa's new boyfriend also said that Andrew had given them detailed addresses, even though no one had told Andrew. Based on this information, police began tracking Andrew's location in Rowlett. Not long after, they saw Andrew, along with his daughter Willow, packing up to leave for an extended period of time. When Andrew got into the car, the police stopped and searched the unmarked car. During the search, they found men's boots cut into pieces and soaked in drugs. Police discovered items related to camouflage makeup, napkins with makeup on them. When police searched Andrew's home, they found a lot of evidence. They discovered the pin for a GPS tracking device that Andrew had attached to Alyssa and her new boyfriend's car. Police also found an automatic silencer for a handgun and a cache of weapons. And police also found the phone that Andrew used when he called the police to report the discovery of drugs in Alyssa's car. Police confiscated 3 of Andrew's phones. When police checked the search history of one of those cell phones, they found questions about how to disassemble a gun barrel on his hand. This suggests that Andrew was trying to cover his tracks. Police found an abandoned black Ford Expedition SUV on the outskirts of town. When they examined the cabin, forensic experts found Alyssa's blood and fake beard hairs with Andrew's DNA. The dealer confirmed that Andrew had bought the car and paid in cash. Forensic tests showed that Alyssa's fatal bullet was fired from a .45 caliber handgun found in the car. Andrew's fingerprints were also found on the handle of the hunting knife. Additionally, Andrew's handwriting appeared on GPS devices and in calls to police. It appears that the prosecution has assembled evidence of Andrew Bird's guilt. However, the complaint also seeks to hold his co-defendant, Holly Elkins, accountable. Email exchanges between Andrew and Holly Elkins revealed Holly Elkins' role in planning and inciting the crime. The investigation spanned several months, during which time the prosecution assembled strong evidence tying Andrew and Holly Elkins to the brutal death of Alyssa Burkett. In June 2022, the Alyssa Burkett murder trial began, nearly 2 years after the tragedy. The two defendants, 35-year-old Andrew Bird and 23-year-old Holly Elkins, were charged with stalking, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. A key witness was Christopher Mayo, Alyssa's new boyfriend at the time of her death. Christopher Mayo told the jury what had happened over the course of several months, including the arguments and troubles they had endured. Christopher Mayo recalled numerous occasions when Alyssa expressed to him her fear that Andrew would harm her. Christopher Mayo witnessed Andrew's frequent threats over the phone, along with lies that damaged Alyssa's reputation with social services and the police. In addition, Christopher Mayo believed that the person directly directing all of the above actions was Holly Elkins. Alyssa's co-workers and friends shared her grief. Before her death, Alyssa shared with her co-workers and friends her fear of Andrew and the feeling of being constantly watched. Alyssa even told a friend that if anything happened to her, Andrew would be the one to do it. Forensic experts presented the jury with a large amount of physical evidence linking Andrew Bird to the crime scene. The evidence included Andrew's DNA and fingerprints on the murder weapon, as well as gunpowder residue and camouflage in his home and car. And evidence of email exchanges between Andrew and Holly Elkins, indicating they had planned the crime together. Andrew's defense argued that his actions were unintentional and not premeditated. The defense also stressed that Andrew was under a lot of pressure and stress from the protracted legal battle, which had affected Andrew's emotions. However, evidence from the correspondence and the careful planning of the act refutes these theories. Meanwhile, Holly Elkins denied any involvement, offering a plea, but her testimony was also full of lies. Holly Elkins' text messages incited Andrew to take action against her rival Alyssa. In May 2023, the judge handed down the verdict. Andrew Bird was sentenced to 43 years in prison. Holly Elkins was sentenced to 20 years in prison for being an accessory to a crime. The courtroom erupted in applause as justice was finally served. Alyssa Burkett's killers got what they deserved. Alyssa family, in pain and tears, expressed deep gratitude to the journalists and the jury. Although the killer faces a harsh sentence, Alyssa Burkett's family cannot make up for their terrible loss. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Ardith Wood. Ardith Wood, a 27-year-old woman, is a beautiful and extremely intelligent girl. She was a PhD candidate in philosophy at Waterloo University and worked as an editor for a philosophy journal. Ardith is about to achieve his long-held dream of becoming a professor. In the summer of 2003, Ardith visited her family in Ottawa, Canada. She spends time happily with her loved ones, going for walks and cooking together. On August 6th, Ardith went for a morning jog. When she returned home, she found her parents had thoughtfully prepared a delicious breakfast for her. With the warm weather, Ardith decided to borrow her brother's bike and go for a ride. She promised to return in a couple of hours. Her mother planned to go shopping before lunch, expecting Ardith to be back by then. Ardith cycled on a trail that wound through the forest, along the river, and past cliffs. The route was usually peaceful and safe, but on this day, something very bad happened. Ardith failed to return home, leaving her mother worried. A heavy downpour began, adding to the concern. The woman realized her daughter wouldn't be riding her bike in the bad weather, but as time passed and Ardith didn't return, the family began to search for her. They thought she might have fallen off her bike and needed help. Since the city has many bike paths, they weren't sure which one she chose. They had to search the entire town. Despite their efforts, they found nothing, and when night fell, they went to the police station. The bad weather forced them to postpone the search until the next morning. The next day there was still no news of Ardith, prompting police to launch the largest search operation in Ottawa history. The massive search operation involved around 1,000 people, including rescue teams, police officers, dog handlers and trained dogs, helicopters, and a large number of volunteers. Ardith's family joined the search, putting up posters with her photo all over the city. However, the first few days showed no progress. The police then asked the public for help. Before long, a local resident called in, saying that on the day Ardith disappeared, she was on the bike path in the forest and saw a suspicious man with a bicycle. A young man with a pleasant appearance, well-dressed but acting suspiciously, was described by the witness. His behavior was frightening, as he had attempted to push a girl off her bike and drag her into the bushes. Fortunately, others arrived on the scene, and the perpetrator fell behind, allowing the girl to escape quickly. Following this incident, the girl no longer felt safe walking or cycling alone. The incident occurred in the Green Creek area, and she suspected the stranger may have also attacked Ardith. The witness was asked to create a composite sketch at the police station. The suspect was described as a light-skinned, dark-haired young man with a beard and glasses, aged 20 to 30 years old. He was athletically built. However, when the sketch was shown to Ardith's family, they did not recognize anyone familiar to Ardith. The sketch's features, such as glasses and a beard, were common at the time, making it difficult to pinpoint a specific individual. The investigators decided not to share Ardith's picture with the media, as they were concerned it would trigger a flood of misleading tips. Instead, police showed her photo to local residents, believing someone must have seen her due to her striking appearance. They believed it was likely that a witness had seen her and could offer a valuable clue. Their assumption proved correct when 16-year-old Laura called the police. Laura said she saw Ardith on the bike trail on the same day that Ardith went missing. Laura was riding her bicycle and noticed Ardith sitting on a rock, appearing to rest. As Laura continued on, she heard a scream and turned to see Ardith arguing with a man. Laura was unsure what to make of the situation, thinking it might be a lover's quarrel. Ardith didn't seem to be calling for help, and Ardith eventually followed the man into the woods. Laura wanted to know what was happening but was scared by an approaching storm, and she quickly rode home. As Laura was leaving, she thought she heard a scream. The police asked her to come to the station to look at a composite sketch of a suspect. She recognized the person in the sketch. According to Laura, the incident occurred around 10 p.m. at Green Creek. After that, the police received several more calls from girls who had encountered the same creepy guy on the trail. He had attacked them, but they were lucky enough to escape. There was one particular call from one woman that was especially noteworthy. She described how an attractive stranger approached her while she was walking. They had a pleasant conversation at first, but then his behavior changed drastically. The man started grabbing her, but the woman was able to push him away with her bicycle and quickly flee. She didn't look back, fearing he would catch up to her. When she got home, she told her family about the incident and warned them to stay away from that area. Strangely, none of the girls who were attacked had reported the incidents to the police. The search for the suspect focused on the creek area. Soon, the police found Ardith's bicycle, which suggested they were on the right track. Meanwhile, investigators received an anonymous call that would prove to be a crucial breakthrough in the case. He reveals that a terrible incident happened in the forest, and alarmingly he was involved in it. He said he didn't mean to hurt or kill anyone, but when he panicked, he hid the body. The man explained that he moved Ardith over a creek, made a shallow hole, and put her in it, hiding the spot with branches. Then, he quickly hung up the phone. The police were able to locate the source of the call, which was a phone booth situated 20 minutes away from Ottawa. The police quickly arrived, looking for witnesses or collecting evidence such as fingerprints or DNA from the anonymous caller. However, upon arrival, they were met with disappointment. The handset had been thoroughly wiped clean, and no eyewitnesses or surveillance cameras were found. The search for Ardith continued in Green Creek with the aid of specially trained dogs that could detect the scent of human remains. With the assistance of the dogs, the investigators located Ardith's grave, situated between two trees in a secluded, picturesque area. As the detective approached, they saw the partially buried, naked body of Ardith. Perhaps the criminal panicked after being seen by someone, leading to a hasty burial of Ardith. Upon examining the crime scene, criminologists found no fingerprints or DNA evidence. Medical examiners confirmed the cause of death as drowning, with algae present in Ardith's lungs, indicating she was alive when submerged in water. Despite the body being discovered naked, there were no definitive signs of rape, although the possibility was not ruled out. The police suspected the crime was sexually motivated, as the perpetrator targeted girls in secluded areas. Detectives were concerned that the suspect might commit again crime, so they had to quickly find and arrest him. The police thought the perpetrator had already assaulted several girls and killed Ardith, so they were determined to stop them from hurting anyone else. To expedite the investigation, authorities released a composite sketch of the suspect to the media, soliciting public assistance in identifying the individual. The response yielded approximately 4,000 leads, which investigators meticulously processed, a time-consuming task. A pivotal development emerged on September 10th, when police disclosed that the suspect had a distinctive eagle tattoo on his left shoulder, as reported by the girls who encountered him in the forest. A crucial lead emerged that could potentially track down the perpetrator. The media released a sketch of the tattoo, lead to several calls to the police from individuals reporting acquaintances with bird tattoos on various body parts. Unfortunately, these tips didn't yield any concrete results. However, in April 2004, investigators stumbled upon a significant clue while processing another batch of calls. A man claimed to know the killer, stating that the individual lived in the area and was seen riding a bicycle in the Green Creek vicinity around the time of the crime. Intrigued, detectives invited he for questioning. Upon arriving at the police station, investigators were astonished to find that the individual matched the perpetrator's description in both appearance and age. During the conversation, the young man displayed visible nervousness, stating that he frequently rode his bike along the trail without understanding the issue at hand. When asked to reveal his shoulder, an eagle tattoo was discovered, sparking further interest from the authorities. The investigation revealed that the man had a prior history of run-ins with the law, making him the prime suspect. During the 3-hour interrogation, he responded to questions with hostility and aggression. At one point, he described himself as unpredictable, like a scorpion under a rock. Despite lacking an alibi for the day of Ardith's disappearance, he denied any involvement in her murder. However, due to insufficient evidence, the suspect was released, but the police kept him under surveillance. Weeks later, he was brought in for questioning again. This time, the detectives were better prepared, having gathered more information about him. They also suggested he take a polygraph test, which he agreed to and surprisingly passed. Consequently, the police were left with no alternative but to dismiss the suspicions against him. With the investigation stalled, the Ottawa police offered a $50,000 reward for any information that would help solve the case, the largest reward ever offered in similar circumstances. The response was extremely strong, with approximately 5,000 calls received, each providing a potential lead for the police to investigate. The investigator became interested in a tip about Christopher Myers, a 25-year-old janitor who had previously been convicted of selling illegal substances. Colleagues described Christopher as quiet and non-confrontational, with a face that closely resembled the composite sketch of the suspect, including a similar beard. Initially, the police were thrilled, thinking they had found the right man. However, they were wrong. Christopher had an alibi for the day of Ardath's disappearance. His landlord stated that on August 6, 2003, Christopher was at home in the morning, then he heading to his job at a restaurant. This revelation puzzled the police, as they wondered how the landlord could recall the details of that day so clearly a year later. Another discrepancy emerged. Christopher did not have an eagle tattoo on his shoulder, despite witnesses claiming to have seen one. The detectives considered the possibility that he had removed the tattoo and remained convinced that Christopher was the suspect they were looking for. They were determined to prove it. A few weeks after Ardath's incident, a similar attack took place in the evening. A girl who bore a striking resemblance to Ardath was walking alone across a bridge when she noticed someone following her. Upon turning around, she saw an attractive man approaching on a bicycle. The girl made it clear she wasn't interested in talking and asked to be left alone. The man initially rode past her, but then turned his bicycle around and charged at her. With no one nearby to assist, the attacker jumped off his bike and forcibly dragged the girl into the bushes. Her loud screams seemed to frighten the assailant, causing him to flee. The victim reported the incident to the police, but it was handled by different investigators who treated it as an attempted robbery. The detectives working on Ardath's case didn't learn about this incident until much later. In May, another similar attack occurred, targeting a blonde woman. The woman was walking home late one evening after attending a party when a stranger approached her, trying to initiate a conversation. After she asked to be left alone, the stranger claimed to be lost and asked for directions. The woman provided him with the necessary information, and he seemingly left. However, just 10 minutes later, he launched a surprise attack on her from the bushes. The assailant violently attacked the girl, strangling her and twisting her neck. Believing her life was in danger, she fiercely resisted by screaming, hitting, and biting him. Her cries for help caught the attention of nearby residents, who rushed out to investigate. The commotion frightened the attacker, causing him to flee in haste, but he not before making a critical mistake, dropping his phone. Upon investigation, it was discovered that the phone belonged to Christopher Myers. This discovery confirmed the connection between Christopher Myers and a number of cases that shared a similar motif, all targeted blonde girls of similar appearance. When brought in for questioning, Christopher denied any involvement in the murder or other attacks, claiming he had never been to Green Creek or met Ardath. He attributed his behavior to mental health issues and uncontrollable aggression, but insisted he had never physically harmed anyone. Detectives observed that Christopher had crooked teeth and asked him to undergo a polygraph test. The 5-hour test revealed that Christopher was not telling the truth, but he insisted he was innocent, claiming the polygraph results were incorrect. As polygraph results are not admissible as evidence, Christopher to be released. Over the next 5 months, detectives gathered more evidence by interviewing Christopher's acquaintances, including family members, friends, co-workers, and his ex-girlfriend. The investigation found that Christopher had a tough childhood due to growing up in a home plagued by alcoholism. As a result, he developed attention deficit disorder and schizophrenia. Christopher was removed from his biological family and adopted by another couple who showed him love and care. However, his behavioral problems were too difficult to control, and when he was 12 years old, his adoptive parents took him back to the orphanage. As he aged, Christopher appeared to lead a typical life. He graduated from school, attended university, made friends, and lived in a dorm. However, Christopher's roommate thought him strange due to the disturbing stories he shared, which eventually led to him dorm kicked out. An ex-girlfriend revealed that Christopher enjoyed cycling in Ottawa's scenic trails and had a fascination with tattoos, notably one of an eagle on his left shoulder. A sketch of the tattoo was shown to the ex-girlfriend. She confirmed its resemblance to the one Christopher had. On October 13, 2005, Christopher was called in for questioning. The interrogation took place in a small room, with burly men who positioned their chairs close to Christopher, exerting significant psychological pressure. The investigators began with a straightforward assertion: "We know you are responsible for Ardith's death." Christopher gave a vague response initially. 3 hours later, he began testifying, but his account was confusing and inconsistent. He admitted to being in Green Creek on the day of the incident, where he met Ardith. He was drawn to her beauty and tried to get to know her. He started by complimenting her and chatting, then invited her into the woods, and she agreed. In the woods, Christopher claimed he hugged and kissed her, but she pulled away, Ardith apparently not enjoying his advances. Ardith tried to run but fell into the creek. Christopher claimed he tried to save her but was unsuccessful. His actions after the incident, however, raised suspicions. He pulled her body from the water, undressed her, and buried her. When faced with a murder charge, Christopher immediately retracted his statement, claiming he had never met Ardith and his testimony was based on information gathered from the press. Christopher eventually confessed to the murder, providing a map of the trails in Green Creek where he encountered Ardith. He also identified another individual, likely 16 years old Laura, who witnessed him with Ardith in the forest. Laura confirmed that Christopher was the man she saw at the time. On October 20, 2005, Christopher was arrested. Initially, he agreed to recreate the incidents at the crime scene but later claimed it was not the correct location. Despite the evidence matching, Christopher's unstable mental state led to inconsistent testimony, and he confessed to additional attacks on girls, resulting in further charges. During the trial, Christopher's lawyer portrayed him as a troubled young man. Initially, Christopher denied his previous confessions but later decided to plead guilty on January 8, 2008, following his defense attorney's advice. 5 years after the murder, Christopher admitted to the crime but refused to provide motives or details. He also confessed to the other attacks. The prosecution argued that Christopher's presence on the forest trail that day was not coincidental. Instead, he was deliberately stalking potential victims, much like a hunter. He had already assaulted several girls who managed to escape. It is thought that Christopher's intention was to sexually assault someone. Ardith happened to match his desired victim type, being a blonde woman he found attractive. Christopher tried to start a conversation with Ardith, but things got worse, and an argument broke out between them. Laura happened to be riding by, overheard their altercation. The killer tricked Ardith into going into the woods, where he attacked and tried to rape her. To escape, Ardith ran and jumped into the creek. However, Christopher caught up to her and drowned her, then buried her body. Ardith's parents supported the prosecution's account, stating that their daughter was a strong swimmer and couldn't have accidentally drowned in the creek. They believed Christopher had intentionally killed Ardith, but they couldn't understand why Ardith had followed him into the wood. As part of a plea deal, Christopher admitted to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years. In 2020, his parole application was rejected because authorities believed there was a significant likelihood he would reoffend against women. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sarah McLynn. Harold Sasko was born in Titusville, Florida, on September 11, 1961, and later became a resident of Kansas City. His family had 12 siblings, and he was known to be responsible and help his siblings with housework. After college, Harold opened his own pizzeria and expanded his business, opening 2 more restaurants in Lawrence and Topeka. In 1990, he relocated to Lawrence with his then-wife Anna and their 3-year-old daughter Mendez. Following this move, he also launched a 3rd restaurant in the nearby city of Topeka. However, his dedication to his business led to problems in his personal life, causing a rift in his marriage and eventually a divorce. Harold was a respected member of his church and prided himself on being a dedicated man. Those who know him find him to be kind, thoughtful, and meticulous in his management work. However, on January 17, 2014, Harold vanished unexpectedly, leaving behind many unanswered questions surrounding his disappearance. The day started like any other Friday, with the weekend just ahead. People continued to go about their daily business, including the staff at his pizza shop. However, when they arrived at work, they found the restaurant deserted and quiet. Typically, Harold would be there to open the kitchen, but he was nowhere to be found. What's more, no one had heard from him in several days, which was unusual. Concerned for Harold's safety, staff contacted police and asked them to check on him at his home on West 26th Street. Later that day, an officer visited Harold's residence, knocking on the front door and window, but receiving no response. The officer then looked inside and saw a man lying face down on the floor. Police entered the house and confirmed the man was Harold. He was lying in a pool of his own blood and had clearly been dead for several days. Moreover, the scene suggested that Harold's death was no accident. His hands were bound behind his back with zip ties, indicating that someone had intentionally restrained him. His legs were also tied, further suggesting a deliberate act. The most disturbing detail, however, was the deep gash in his throat, which had severed the bone and made survival impossible. The officers were confronted with a gruesome scene. In addition to the ties and the fatal wound, the police found several empty bottles at the opposite end of the room, as well as a phone and laptop that didn't belong to Harold. They also noted that Harold's car was missing from the driveway. One peculiar piece of evidence was the word "freedom" scrawled on the wall in Harold's blood. As the police presence in the Harold's house, this attracted the attention of curious neighbors. The officers decided to use this to their advantage by asking more questions. Through these investigations, that they discovered Harold wasn't living alone. Neighbors reported that he was living with a girl he referred to as his stepdaughter. This information proved crucial for the investigation, as it revealed that there was someone who not only knew Harold well and had regular contact with him but was also likely present at the crime scene. It was eventually confirmed that the stepdaughter was 18-year-old Sarah McLynn, who had been living with Harold for the past 2 years. However, Sarah was missing. This caused the police to become suspicious. Finding her became a top priority, as her disappearance left many unanswered questions. She could have been a victim, witness, suspect, or none of these. It was crucial to locate her. Then police notified Harold's family and friends about the incident. A funeral for Harold was planned for February 8, 3 weeks after the incident. The police asked the public to contact Douglas County forensic investigators with any information about Sarah's location. A $1,000 reward was offered for any information that could help find her. Sarah McLynn was born on July 9, 1994, in Topeka, Kansas. She was raised in a loving family with her parents and 2 siblings. And she had an especially strong bond with her sister. As a child, Sarah was known for being shy and kind. She spent most of her childhood being homeschooled, which limited her social circle to her neighborhood. However, Her life took a challenging turn when her parents divorced during her teenage years. This significant change had a profound impact on Sarah, making her more vulnerable. As she adjusted to her new situation, she encountered challenges that made her teenage years even more difficult. After her parents separated, Sarah's previously sheltered life left her vulnerable to people who exploited her innocence. Sadly, she experienced abuse from a neighbor, which altered her personality and behavior. Her mother was deeply concerned about this change, because she found it difficult to adapt to the new way of life among them. Sarah started secretly leaving her house at night to spend time with a bad crowd. This led to her frequently using drugs and alcohol to cope with her emotional pain. After her parents' divorce, Sarah, 14, no longer wanted to live at home and found a job at a pizzeria to start a new life. Her manager, Harold, 50, initially seemed kind, but rumors among staff suggested otherwise. He told other managers to only hire young, attractive women. While working at the pizzeria, Sarah's routine consisted of waking up, going to work, spending time there, and returning home. However, she often spent her nights drinking before going back to her family's house. Reports indicate that Sarah was usually sober only at work, but even then, her work efficiency is still not high. Despite frequently showing up drunk and nearly getting fired multiple times, she kept her job, likely because Harold felt sorry for her and knew she needed support. When Sarah turned 15, she experienced another traumatic incident, where a man attacked her and burned her with cigarettes. After that, Sarah's mental health, which was already fragile, deteriorated significantly. She stopped attending work, lost friendships, and fell into a deep depression. Within a year, at just 16 years old, she attempted to end her life. Thankfully, her family found her in time and called for medical help. Following a 5-month hospital stay, Sarah made a full recovery. Upon her hospital discharge, Sarah was touched by the support she received from her loved ones and friends. Among the messages of support she received, one in particular caught her attention, a message from Harold, who used to be her supervisor. Harold offered to be Sarah's confidant, someone she could confide in. He would drive her around, take her out to eat, and listen to her problems. Since Sarah had no one else to turn to, she eventually accepted Harold's help. During one of their outings, Sarah opened up to Harold about her past, sharing her traumatic experiences with men, her drinking, and other struggles. Harold realized that she wanted to move out of her family's house. Upon learning about Sarah's traumas, he suggested she move in with him. Although the offer raised some concerns, Sarah was in a vulnerable state, feeling lost and hurt. Harold's offer provided her with an escape, and at 17 years old, she agreed to live with him. Sarah's life seemed to settle down after she moved in with Hal. She found a new job, away from the pizzeria, and Harold took good care of her. Her dog moved in too, and she even thought about attending college. However, Sarah's mother, Michelle, was not pleased with the situation. She found Harold odd and the whole story suspicious. Whenever Michelle wanted to discuss this issue with Sarah, their conversation would become tense, and they would argue loudly, causing Sarah to distance herself even more. Michelle doubted that Harold's intentions were as pure as he claimed. She worried that Sarah was too naive to see the potential issues. After her parents' divorce, Sarah's father had cut off all contact, leaving a void that she was trying to fill. The situation became even more unsettling when Harold asked Sarah to call him Dad and told their neighbors that she was his stepdaughter. As the news spread, Sarah's colleagues started asking about her relationship with Harold. Sarah would tell them that he was just a friend, but from the outside, it seemed unusual for a 50-year-old man to take in a troubled 18-year-old girl. Her peers likely suspected that something was off. After Sarah turned 18, she felt uneasy as Harold's behavior changed drastically. He started buying her alcohol and illegal drugs, made jokes about them being in a romantic relationship, and even suggested a sexual relationship. Harold kept a record of everything he spent on her, including rent, cosmetics, and substances, in an attempt to make her feel indebted to him. He made it clear that she couldn't leave until she paid him back. As a result, Sarah felt trapped and eventually gave in to Harold's advances, leading to a 10-month period of a sexual relationship with the man she once considered a father figure. They had sex several times a week, and Sarah's only way to cope was to consume alcohol and use substances, further increasing her debt to Harold. Harold's behavior was inconsistent, often criticizing Sarah one moment and complimenting her the next. For instance, he would mock her appearance, specifically her nose, and then offer to pay for plastic surgery, which Sarah, unsure of herself, eventually agreed to. Harold treated her like an object he owned, rather than a person with feelings. He exerted control over her by covering expenses, including $16,000 for gum implantation and planning to spend another $16,000 on breast implants. These costs would be added to her debt, forcing her to pay him back when she was financially able. Feeling trapped, she felt she had no way to escape this situation. Harold became even more controlling and threatening. He claimed he would not let her escape, which made her mental health problems worse. To cope with her situation, Sarah was prescribed antidepressants. However, this ended up adding to her financial burden, as she also had to pay for the medication. Sarah had reached her breaking point, and her mind was haunted by dark memories of her abusive past and the terrible burden of depression. She often found herself on the brink, struggling to cope. Just when she thought she had found someone she could trust, that person turned out to be an abuser. This was the final blow for Sarah, and she began to act in ways that would transform her from victim to killer. After visiting a pet store, Sarah purchased a rabbit and signed a waiver, then took it home. Later that evening, a manager from Harold's Pizzeria visited her house for dinner and drinks. When he opened the refrigerator, he was shocked to find a rabbit carcass instead of beer. Sarah admitted to killing the rabbit and revealed that it was not her first victim. The manager, feeling utterly perplexed by the circumstances, accepted the dinner invitation out of politeness, but left for home afterwards. This was a significant warning sign that hinted at Sarah's potential for violence, but it was overlooked. It was later questioned whether Sarah was truly capable of harming a human being. Initially, Sarah was reported missing. However, as the investigation progressed, she became the prime suspect. Detectives soon discovered that she had packed her belongings, taken the dog, stolen a car, and left town. Although initially believed to be heading to Texas, Sarah changed her plans and went to Florida, drawn by the warmer weather and scenic ocean views. Based on this new information, she was officially declared a wanted person. Sarah was a prime suspect in Harold's murder and considered mentally unstable, posing a threat to others. As a result, she was the subject of a nationwide manhunt that lasted for 11 days, with many officers across the country on the lookout for her. On January 25, 2014, after evading capture for over a week, Sarah McLean was finally apprehended in Everglades National Park. She was found sleeping in Harold's stolen car with a loaded gun beside her. The police also discovered $2,400 in cash, 2 additional guns, an axe, and several knives, one of which had Harold's blood on it. Following her arrest, Sarah underwent a 3-hour interrogation, during which she confessed to the murder. According to her account, on January 14, 2014, Harold returned home from work and decided to fix the broken sound system. He requested Sarah to bring him a beer, and then another, and another. Harold collapsed to the floor in exhaustion, unaware that Sarah had slipped a large dose of sleeping pills into one of the beers he was drinking. Sarah had already made up her mind that Harold had to be killed. Sarah restrained him with zip ties, grabbed a hunting knife, and slit his throat. As a result, Harold died shortly after. Following the incident, Sarah took a shower, washing off the blood while listening to her favorite music. She then called her workplace, claiming she would be out for a few days due to a family member's passing. Sarah packed her belongings, including a photo of her sister, took the dog, and fled in Harold's stolen car under the cover of night. To avoid detection, she left her cell phone and laptop behind. During the interrogation, Sarah openly discussed her motives. She explained that she had been trapped in the house Harold's, deeply in debt to he sought to control her. As a result, she became his target, suffered abuse, and was eventually treated as his property. Sarah's anger fueled her desire for revenge, and she was willing to face any consequences to achieve it. In her conversations, she revealed a disturbing fascination with violence and admitted to having thoughts of it for 2 years. Additionally, in a disturbing admission, Sarah confessed to killing rabbits simply out of curiosity. Sarah's confessions put her in a precarious situation, as she not only admitted to killing Harold but also took pleasure in violent acts. It became evident that Sarah would have to stand trial. However, her confessions also showed that she was a woman dealing with difficult mental health problems. Therefore, it was necessary for her to undergo a psychological evaluation to better understand her mental state. The evaluation would help identify any underlying psychological disorders, in addition to her newly expressed tendency towards violence and her reports of memory lapses, during which she felt detached from her own mind. After a thorough assessment, Sarah was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. As it turned out, Sarah had multiple personalities within her, each representing a different side of her complex character. These included Vanessa, a fierce warrior, Alice, the sensitive and emotional part, and Mila, a feminine, gentle side. However, the most tragic version of them was the unnamed individual who bore the full weight of the trauma and oppression. During Sarah's trial, her defense team centered argument around dissociative identity disorder. According to Sarah, one of her alternate personalities, Alice, had suicidal thoughts but was convinced by her other personalities not to harm herself. Instead, they collectively decided that killing Harold was the only solution. The defense team argued that Sarah was in a state of clinical dissociation when she committed the crime, implying that she was not fully in control of her actions. However, the prosecution argued that despite the severity of the abuse Sarah suffered from Harold, the investigation suggested it was consensual. Despite acknowledging the authenticity of Sarah's mental disorder, the judges ultimately found her guilty of murdering Harold. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 50 years, a verdict that shocked both Sarah and her family. The sentencing decision raised concerns that the court had not adequately considered the long-term abuse Sarah endured and her mental state at the time of the crime. As a result, many felt that her punishment was disproportionately harsh. In response, Sarah filed an appeal, arguing that the court should have taken her history of abuse into account during the trial. Fortunately, by that time, more evidence of Harold's horrific behavior had come to light. Upon analyzing his computers, detectives discovered a large collection of illegal pornography. Furthermore, another woman reported that Harold had abused her 2 daughters. Considering this new evidence, Sarah's appeal led to a reduced sentence of 25 years, a 50% decrease from the original sentence. Despite this new information, Sarah remains incarcerated. The judge acknowledged that Harold had indeed abused and manipulated Sarah, but emphasized that this did not justify her premeditated murder. Initially, Sarah was a victim of Harold's exploitation. He was a master manipulator, deceiving many in with his charm. Some individuals still recall his generosity, as he had helped employees in financial. Harold's family acknowledges his wrongdoing but also remembers his positive qualities. They believe he needed help, not death. Similarly, Sarah's family agrees that she should face consequences for her actions but thinks the sentence was too severe. given the circumstances of her trying to escape her abuser. Harold was a complex individual, well-liked by many, yet with a darker side. His story shows how life's difficulties, traumatic incidents, and not having enough support can result in very unfortunate consequences. Sarah was abused by someone she trusted, suffered lasting damage to her mental health. However, this trauma does not excuse her intentional killing of another person. Ultimately, Harold's story teaches us to look beyond a person's appearance, as their true nature may be hidden. Harold, perceived as kind and generous, was actually manipulative and predatory. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Brett Ryan. Brett Ryan was born in 1980 in Toronto into a large and close-knit family. There were 5 children in the family, and Brett was the second. He had 2 older brothers, Christopher and Leland, and a younger brother, AJ. Brett's parents always tried to instill the right values in their children by promoting a healthy lifestyle. Brett's father worked at a newspaper and was also a fitness trainer. His mother dedicated herself to homemaking and loved growing flowers. Brett's mother could be strict and harsh in raising her 4 sons, while his father was gentle and reserved. Each son in the family pursued his own path. After graduating from high school, Brett enrolled at the University of Toronto. However, he quickly struggled with his studies. After 2 painful breakups, Brett could not concentrate on his studies and eventually decided to drop out of university. Brett felt jealous as he watched his friends and classmates build relationships, get married, and achieve success in life. Meanwhile, he felt like he was not accomplishing anything significant, which made him feel like a failure. After getting a job as a painter, he realized that this career was not suitable for him. At the same time, Brett was concerned about his appearance, spending a lot of money on personal needs and on girls. As a result, he accumulated a large debt of up to 60,000 Canadian dollars, which he had no way to repay. When creditors started demanding money, Brett fell into a deep depression. He felt like a complete failure but did not dare to confess his problems to anyone. In desperation, Brett was determined to find a way out of his difficult situation and make a large sum of money quickly. He decided to rob a bank. On October 20, 2007, he put his plan into action. He chose a bank near his home and created a disguise by covering his face with bandages, pretending to have an injured left arm, limping, and carrying a stack of papers. Brett robbed his first bank by pretending to be sick. He entered and approached the cash register. There, he handed over a note demanding cash and warned the clerk that he was hiding a weapon. Out of fear, the clerk quickly gave Brett the money in the cash register. The amount was only about $1,000, which Brett was not happy about, but he decided not to attract any more attention. So he took the money and left the scene. Brett was caught on security cameras during the robbery. Despite this, he was not caught initially because he avoided using the same technique and changed his disguise each time. Instead of using fake bandages to look like a sick person, he wore a fake beard and hat to hide his identity. His next bank robberies achieved different results. Throughout his 12 bank robberies, Brett accumulated more than $28,000 in cash. He was always evasive, trying to avoid the police. Finally, on June 20, 2008, the police identified Brett, and he was arrested during his 13th attempted robbery. This surprised everyone because Brett had previously volunteered at a children's hospital and was now a robber. Brett was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During his sentence, experts conducted psychological evaluations and concluded that he showed no signs of aggression or violence. Additionally, Brett did not use illegal substances and did not suffer from mental disorders during his sentence. After 2 years, Brett was paroled for good behavior. The prison staff were impressed with him because he was a pleasant, charismatic, and hardworking young man. They felt that he had only made one serious mistake due to the pressure of debt and deserved the second chance. Brett's record showed that he was a model prisoner with a low risk of reoffending. Upon his release, Brett was required to attend a course of psychotherapy and report any problems he encountered in his family relationships or at work. This helped him avoid reoffending. However, the reality turned out to be much more complicated than Brett had anticipated. The debts were still outstanding, and he could not pay them off. Finding a job was also difficult because no one wanted to hire an ex-convict, even though he had skills in painting. In desperation, Brett declared bankruptcy. Fortunately, his parents supported him financially, allowing him to continue his studies at university, this time in information technology. Brett also continued to see a psychologist under court order and tried to stabilize his life. During therapy, Brett was advised to be more open and honest with the people around him. In September 2011, a friend of Brett's arranged a blind date with a girl named Kristen Baxter. Kristen was a physical therapist, lived alone in an apartment, and had a small dog. She also loved to travel. When Brett met Kristen, they immediately had a special connection. They quickly found they were compatible and attracted to each other. They both loved animals and traveling, which created a bond between them. Not long after, Brett and Kristen began a romantic relationship. Brett and Kristen spent a lot of time together, attending sporting events and hiking. They also went on a vacation together in the Bahamas with Kristen's family. Kristen's dog immediately took a liking to Brett, which made a good impression. Brett's life seemed to be back on track, and he no longer exhibited suspicious behavior. He longed for a quiet and cozy life with his beloved girlfriend. When Brett moved into Kristen's apartment in January 2013, their relationship entered a new phase. They began thinking about getting married. However, Brett was hiding a truth from Kristen. In reality, he was not the person she thought he was. While Brett's brothers were building their careers and becoming independent, he was just studying and living off his parents' money. He hid his real life and focused only on enjoying the vibrant city life with Kristen. They enjoyed going to cozy restaurants and swimming in the pool at night, but Brett never revealed the truth about his circumstances. Brett and Kristen often traveled to warm countries. However, their lives were turned upside down when Brett's father suddenly passed away. Brett moved in with his mother to help with the funeral arrangements and support her during this difficult time. During this period, Brett confessed to his mother, Susan, that he loved Kristen very much and dreamed of marrying her. However, he did not have enough money to buy a decent engagement ring, so he hesitated to propose. Brett's mother was touched by her son's words and gave him money to buy an expensive ring. With a luxurious diamond ring, Brett proposed to Kristen, and she accepted. The couple began to prepare for their wedding. However, Brett still had many worries about the future. He didn't know how he would support his family. He also had legal issues, bankruptcy, and debt that he hadn't disclosed to Kristen. To address these issues, Brett decided to focus on finding a decent, stable job. In early 2016, Brett finally found a good job in the IT field. He was very happy to share this news with Kristen, and they decided to celebrate with their families. However, everything changed when his new employer learned about his criminal past and fired him immediately. This took a serious toll on Brett's self-esteem. To avoid upsetting Kristen, Brett decided not to tell her about this failure. Instead, he lied and said that he would work remotely from home. Every day, when Kristen went to work, Brett would pretend to work on the computer. Kristen was very happy, thinking that Brett would start earning a lot of money and they would be able to stand on their own. Kristen started preparing for the wedding scheduled for September 16, 2016. She chose the most beautiful and expensive options they could afford. A luxurious banquet hall was booked for the ceremony, and the bachelor party before the wedding was to be held at a luxurious ski resort. The couple even started looking for a spacious and cozy house to settle down in after the wedding, as they were tired of living in a small apartment. Susan was extremely happy, thinking that her son was independent, had graduated from college, and had a high-paying job. She looked forward to the day when her son would get married and move into his own house. But the reality was completely the opposite. Brett had lied about all of this. He was trapped in his own fabricated thoughts and could not get out. In an effort to earn money, Brett took on any side job he could and even helped his mother with housework to earn money. He went to see his mother every day, looking for things to do and fixing things to get paid. Susan became suspicious when she saw her son hanging around the house all day, constantly doing this and that instead of going to work. If Brett made as much money as he claimed, why did he need these odd jobs? Susan began to ask her son difficult questions, which Brett initially tried to avoid. But then he remembered his therapist's advice about the importance of honesty, and finally dared to confess his troubles to his mother. He begged his mother for significant financial support, promising to continue looking for work. However, his mother was extremely disappointed and angry when she learned the truth. She refused to give him any money and threatened to tell Kristen everything. Brett was extremely angry at his mother's harsh words, and he feared that Kristen would leave him if she found out the truth. Brett was desperate because he didn't want to lose his girlfriend and have to move back in with his mother. He feared that if that happened, he would feel like a loser for the rest of his life. So he decided to carry out a strange plan. Unable to legally purchase a gun due to his criminal record, Brett chose to purchase a crossbow to avoid attracting unnecessary attention. He purchased the old crossbow with cash. The next day, Brett returned to his mother's house under the pretext of helping with home repairs to earn money. However, he had other intentions. On August 25, 2016, his mother, Kristen, woke up early as usual and went to work. Meanwhile, Brett stayed home and pretended to work. In reality, he was preparing for another act. To avoid suspicion, Brett created a keystroke automaton on his computer to give the impression that he was working. He also set up an automatic email function to send at a specific time to create an alibi. Next, Brett gathered all the necessary items for his disguise into a gym bag, including clothes and a wig. To avoid being caught on surveillance cameras, he sneaked out of the house through the fire escape and went to Susan's house incognito, wearing clothes and a wig so that no one would recognize him. However, when he reached the door, he took off all his disguises and went inside. Once inside, Brett tried to convince his mother to give him money. But Susan continued to refuse. A fierce argument broke out between them, with Susan demanding that Brett confess his lie to Kristen. Otherwise, she would expose him herself. As the argument became more heated, Susan sensed something was wrong. She took advantage of the moment when Brett stepped outside and called her eldest son, Chris. She begged Chris to come and help resolve the conflict with Brett. Brett returned to the garage for an important reason: he had hidden a crossbow there earlier. Once he found the weapon, he began to prepare everything for the shot. However, this required more time and effort than he had imagined. At that moment, his mother entered the garage in a rage. Brett quickly found a nearby tool and struck her twice, hitting her in the cheek and ear. She screamed in pain and shock at the sight of her own son attacking her. A fight broke out between them. During the scuffle, both fell to the floor and rolled around, knocking over everything in their path. In the chaos, Brett found a long, dirty rag, and without thinking much, he used it to strangle her. Only after carrying out this act did Brett realize that things had gone terribly wrong. His original murder plan had turned into a nightmare. He remembered that his brother Chris, who had been called by their mother, was about to arrive at the garage. Brett decided to remove his brother from the list of potential witnesses. He jumped up, grabbed the crossbow, and started preparing. A plan to kill Chris formed in Brett's mind. After preparing everything for the new crime, Brett hid in the garage, waiting for Chris. Soon, Chris entered the garage to find their mother, not knowing that he was in danger. Brett quietly approached Chris from behind and shot him in the back of the head. Chris fell immediately. Brett dragged his body close to their mother's and covered it with a tarp. Brett quickly changed his clothes and prepared to run away. However, he did not expect that his younger brother, AJ, was visiting and appeared at the door. For Brett, this was a disastrous situation. Brett began to consider his next move: run away after changing his clothes or stay and kill AJ. He feared that when his brother discovered the bodies, AJ would immediately call the police and he would be arrested. This fear drove Brett to commit another murder. After finding AJ, Brett followed him. Brett approached AJ with the intention of shooting him in the back of the head, just as he had done to Chris. However, this time things did not go as planned. AJ sensed danger and noticed that Brett was carrying a weapon. A scuffle broke out between the two brothers. During the fight, Brett attempted to injure AJ by shooting him in the neck with the crossbow. AJ screamed in pain and fled. He ran out of the house, leaving a trail of blood in the sand, and eventually collapsed from exhaustion in the driveway. It was then that Brett learned that there was another brother sleeping in the house, Leland, 39. He was awakened by AJ's terrified screams. Leland looked out the window and saw his brother covered in blood on the road. Panicked, he rushed to the phone to call 911 but couldn't make it. At that moment, Brett rushed at him in a frenzy. Leland and Brett started a fierce fight, spreading throughout the house and turning it into a bloody mess. Taking advantage of Brett's distraction, Leland sneaked out without being detected. He crawled to the neighbor's house and passed out right in front of it. The kind neighbors immediately called the police. Meanwhile, Brett angrily ran back to the yard and saw AJ, injured, trying to crawl away. Obsessed with the desire to kill his brother, Brett chased after AJ before the neighbors discovered him. However, while chasing AJ, Brett was surprised to find that Leland had told the neighbors everything. From that moment on, Brett had no chance to save himself. The police were about to arrive at the crime scene and put an end to his bloody journey. Brett's murder plan had failed. In desperation, Brett decided to surrender and returned to the house. There, he sat on the porch, holding a bottle of water, and waited for the police to arrive. When the police and ambulance arrived, paramedics confirmed that their mother and Chris had passed away. AJ still had signs of life, but his condition was critical. However, on the way to the hospital, AJ passed away due to his injuries. Leland, despite his serious injuries, survived. He was taken to the hospital for treatment and medical attention and gradually began to recover. Meanwhile, Brett was arrested at the scene of the crime and faced serious charges of first-degree murder and attempted murder of his brother. The news left Kristen reeling, especially since their wedding was only 3 weeks away. Kristen was devastated when she learned the truth about her lover. Brett's criminal past, including a robbery conviction, financial hardship, unemployment, and the horrific murder of his family, left her in disbelief. She wondered how she could have lived with this man all this time without knowing the truth. Kristen immediately called off the wedding and returned to her apartment. There, she discovered a strange device that Brett had made to create an alibi. Mistaking it for an explosive device, she panicked and called the police. The police quickly arrived at the scene, evacuated the residents of the building, and began to carefully examine the mysterious device. After a short time, they discovered that the device was just a clever invention of Brett's. Although initially concerned about the danger, the police later realized that the device was harmless. However, they were impressed by Brett's extraordinary ingenuity and care. His intelligence and inner strength were undeniable, but unfortunately, he used them for the wrong purpose. At trial, Brett pleaded guilty and made a deal with the prosecution. He admitted that his actions constituted second-degree murder and hoped for a lighter sentence. Brett explained that he only intended to use the crossbow to scare his mother and have a serious talk with her. He wanted his mother to finally understand and support him, but things got out of hand. Brett claimed that he had no intention of hurting his brothers. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The prosecution believed that the defendant had planned to harm his mother from the beginning, not just stop at a conversation. They argued that Brett had brought the crossbow with the intention of killing Susan and should be held strictly responsible. As a result, he was convicted of first-degree murder of his mother and second-degree murder of his brother. The court handed down harsh sentences, 3 life terms with the possibility of parole after 25 years. In addition, Brett was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the attempted murder of his brother Leland. All sentences were to run concurrently, meaning he could only apply for early release after a quarter of a century. Brett's only surviving brother, Leland, received the sentence with relief. Despite the pain and bitterness of the loss, Leland truly respected Brett's remorse. In Leland's mind, his brother was not a bad person at heart but had lost his way in life. Brett had taken the path of deceit and was eventually mired in the quagmire of his own lies. He could no longer get out, which led to a terrible tragedy. Brett Ryan's terrifying story serves as a warning to us all. It demonstrates that small lies and the concealment of truth can lead to dire consequences. When we continue to lie, the lies grow and accumulate, becoming unmanageable. As a result, not only is the liar's life ruined, but so are the lives of their loved ones. Brett Ryan had the opportunity to change after his first prison sentence. He had the support of his girlfriend and a loving family, and he could have gone to school and found a job. However, he chose to lie, leading to a disastrous outcome and ruining more than one life. Whether Brett truly admitted his mistake or just wanted a lighter sentence is not as important as the lessons he learns while serving his life sentence. Can he look back on his life, reflect on his mistakes, and strive to become a better version of himself? Only Brett knows the answer. However, his story certainly makes us reflect on our own actions.